1310 AM.
It's Monday, October 18th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 7 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Breaking news from the United States this morning, mourning the death, the former Secretary of State, Laura Carney, has the details.
The family of General Colin Powell confirming his death in a post on Facebook this morning, saying he passed away due to complications from COVID-19. Noting he was fully vaccinated, the family writes, quote, "We've lost a remarkable and loving husband, father, grandfather, and a great American." Powell was a pivotal figure in the administrations of 3 Republican presidents. CNN's Wolf Blitzer describing him as larger than life.
So powerful, so smart, and such a wonderful human being. I'm sure, like so many other journalists who covered him, I'm very sad to hear the news that he's now passed away.
Now, Powell's career took him from combat duty in Vietnam to becoming the first Black national security advisor during the end of Ronald Reagan's presidency, and the youngest and first African-American chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under President George H.W. Bush. His reputation, though, would forever be stained when, as George W. Bush's first Secretary of State, he pushed that faulty intelligence before the United Nations to advocate for the Iraq War, which he would later call a blot on his record. Laura Carney, City News.
City News time, 9:01, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
On the cool side for us today, you'll need an extra layer. Slight chance of showers, a gusty northwest wind this morning, but it will settle down this afternoon. The high today near 10. Tonight, partly cloudy, just 3 degrees, and tomorrow, sun and cloud warmer up to 17. For today, a rather cool high, 10.
And right now, 7 degrees in Smiths Falls and in Ottawa. The search for a missing Shopify executive continues. 35-year-old Brett O'Grady, whose LinkedIn profile has him as treasurer at Shopify, has been missing since early Thursday morning. That's in the East End around Aviation Parkway, Avro Circle. Now, police and volunteers did spend the weekend in a search of the wooded area around Aviation Parkway and the Ottawa River. A water and shoreline search, as well as a drone, have all been used to comb the area. If you live around George Etienne Parkway, Polaris Avenue, Ottawa River, Aviation Parkway, you could see more police and searchers through the day today. Anyone who has any information about Brett is asked to call Ottawa Police. We do have a full description as well as pictures up on our website. Go to ottawa.citynews.ca. City News time, 9:02. Now, City Council will be getting a full briefing today on the Rideau Transit Group's return to service proposal. City Manager Steve Kanellakos updated Council late on Friday after he had received the RTG plan late in the day. Kanellakos says this was a very lengthy report, so he has asked staff to review it over the weekend. The plan will then be given to City Council today. The system has been down since a mid-September derailment, which is under Transportation Safety Board investigation. Last week, Council did approve a review of the entire LRT project. That is being done by the city's Auditor General. All Ontarians vaccinated against COVID-19 will now be able to download their enhanced certificates. That includes a QR code. Provincial government had said the scannable documents will allow for a faster entry into settings that do require proof of COVID vaccination. The enhanced system officially took effect on Friday, or does take effect Friday, but you can get your new vaccine certificate before then. Businesses can also start using the new app to verify those codes. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Good, bad, or complicated.
There's no news in Ottawa and the Valley he won't talk about.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Out of the weekend and into the week. Away we go on the Rob Snow Show on City News. We're always thrilled when you make us part of your day here at City News. And you won't be disappointed today because we are going to be covering a lot of ground this morning. Local issues are in focus. What's it like to be in the restaurant business these days? With vaccine certificates and labor shortages and Lots of talk about the rising cost of living, rising prices. Lots to talk about with food inflation, higher costs for everything. $1.47 a liter now. $1.46.9 around the corner for gas at the Esso. I mean, basically $1.47 a liter. That's the highest I've ever seen it. But before I get carried away on the price of gas, running a family restaurant, what is that like right now? We'll ask Dom Santaguida. Coming back on the program this morning, the owner of Vittoria Trattoria. He's been on the show a few times during the course of the pandemic, the trials and the tribulations, and if it's not one thing, it's another. In the restaurant business, we'll find out what the latest other things are. And we're going to talk a lot this morning about the city's official plan. Official plan. Not going to get all wonky on you, but this is a very interesting report, the official plan, okay? Because it's the official plan. It's official. If it's not in the official plan, chances are it's not going to get very far. And they have been working on this official plan, this giant master plan, since 2019 down at the city of Ottawa. And it has been the topic of intense discussion for several days now at the Joint Planning and Agriculture Rural Affairs Committee. I mean, it's all about how we plan the city, right? It's the official version of where are we going to live? What kind of dwellings will we live in? Where will we work? How will we get there? All of these things. Urban, suburban, rural, it's all affected by the official plan. It is supposed to be the guiding document. It is the planning holy scripture for all things planning related in the city of Ottawa. So there's a lot on the line. And I'm not surprised. I'm encouraged by it that residents have been providing their feedback, that they are curious about it or concerned about it, worried about it. They want to have their say. That's good. More than 90 delegations showed up at this committee over the last few days. And that committee is ongoing again today. Is that right, David? Yes. And an update on light rail today as well. The official plan is supposed to be headed to the full city council by the end of the month. So we're kind of lucky here this morning. We've managed to track down Neil Malhotra. Now, Mr. Malhotra is the chief financial officer of Claridge Homes. Claridge is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, property development firm in this city. And I can tell you that his firm has been following the official plan with great interest, you can imagine. And I spoke with Neil Malhotra this morning, tracked him down at Pierre Elliott Trudeau Airport in Montreal, had a lengthy conversation, just asking someone who builds homes for a living what he thinks of the city's official plan. And he has quite a few thoughts on it. I'll give you a couple of highlights. You can hear the full interview coming up at 9:30. He thinks the official plan is going to drive up the price of housing in Ottawa, the cost of housing in Ottawa. He told me this morning, and this should be the headline grabber, he told me the measures in this official plan will add about $100,000 to the price of a new home in Ottawa. Just, I'm using my air quotes here, just government. Government, okay? The measures in the official plan. You know, that $700,000 house is going to become an $800,000 house. And he told me the plan of this official plan means we're not going to be building enough homes, which will further increase the cost of owning a home in Ottawa. The city's population estimates, they're off. They're off. The city has its figures, but the city's figures don't line up with the provincial figures. And as a result, he says, we're not going to build nearly enough homes to keep up with demand because of a growing population. So I think it's a really interesting time to speak with Mr. Malhotra, and we're going to do that after the 9:30 news. Don't miss that interview. It's not bad, if I do say so myself. Then, from that to the Taywin development, which is also very controversial in the context of the official plan. This is the so-called fourth suburb that is planned for Ottawa in the East End. This is the partnership between Taggart and this group called the AOO, Algonquins of Ontario, AOO. And that group was speaking at the meeting about the official plan last week. But not everyone is quite on board with this idea, Taywin, because some Algonquin leaders, elders, chiefs, they don't view the AOO as a legitimate group to speak on behalf of, to deal with land claims reconciliation on behalf of, quote unquote, real Algonquins. Their words, not mine. Kitigan Zibi elder Claudette Commanda is one of the critics of how all of this came to be. Uses the term reconciliation, W-R, reconciliation. So we're going to get into this issue again this morning. I mean, you basically have two Algonquin communities. They don't see eye to eye on this. You have Kitigan Zibi up near Maniwaki, not in favor of the Taywin plan. And then you have Pikwaganagon First Nation near Golden Lake, 100% behind it, fully endorse it. But Claudette Commanda, Kitigan Zibi elder, my guest at 11:30 this morning. And the Talkback Hour. You're in the middle of every Rob Snow show with the Talkback Hour. We're going to do a rapid poll this morning. We do the Talkback Hour every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock. It is an hour of opinions. It is an hour of phone calls. And if I do say so myself, it's the hottest hour of talk radio in town. And this morning I want to talk about the CERB, the CRB, the most recent version of the CERB, Canada Recovery Benefit. That is the income relief program that replaced the original CERB, the CERB with the E, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. Look, whatever you call it, it's supposed to end on Saturday. No more CERB, with or without an E. CERB is supposed to expire on Saturday. Should it? Income relief. It's about $600 every 2 weeks now. Should it be allowed to expire, or should the government extend that? How do you answer that question? That's what I want to ask you this morning during the Talkback Hour. Has the economy recovered enough now? Has the job situation improved enough now that the government should end the CERB relief program, the CRB relief program? Is it a disincentive to work? Is it causing, or at least contributing to, the labor shortage? 730,000 job vacancies across the country, according to Statistics Canada, and drive around the city. Help wanted. We're hiring. The signs are everywhere. Should CERB be allowed to expire on Saturday as scheduled, or should the government extend that program? Yes or no? Why or why not? I want to take as many calls as I can during the Talkback Hour. Your hour. Your opinions, please take part on the Rob Snow Show on the City News.
We just took over this business about a few weeks prior to the pandemic. But we've been loving the community, the people, very friendly. But it's been very difficult starting up a new business, just the time that we did. But I'm sure it's the same everywhere. We did take a broken business, which doesn't help us. But we thought, we believe in what we do. We're very passionate about food. And we just really wanted to share the Iraqi culture through our food. All our recipes are homemade, so this is very unique. Usually you hear restaurants, shops, it's all frozen food or prepared food. So nothing here is prepared, everything is homemade. We get our meat and produce from a local farm. So supporting local is the way to go. We are supporting all the way. And our meat are actually marinated the day of, so it's as fresh as can be. Quality ingredients and everything is made from scratch. I get a lot of people when they come in, they say it tastes like Middle Eastern, like back home. So for you to been to Iraq and have the food there, you can really compare and see the similarity. We do like to focus on healthy. So our recipes, not only the homemade, again, everything is from scratch, but we have from combos and to small sandwiches. One of our favorites and very popular is the chicken salad and the beef salad. So now you're getting all the protein and all these amazing ingredients that we all need. During this time, I find a lot of people are sitting at home and not enough movement. So to come here and get something healthy other than go elsewhere and just put, what's not so good for our bodies, makes a huge difference. So we have shawarma sandwiches, combos. I mean, if you're looking for a meal to feed your family, I would highly recommend the family platter. It comes literally with everything, with potatoes, with rice, with chicken, with beef, and we don't charge extra for mix. I know a lot of places do. Here we just add everything to your platter. And lots of healthy choices for sure. We're very passionate about food, and for our small family business, it's been good. Like I said, it's a little struggle, but we are not a chained restaurant.
Listen free for 30 days with trial on audible.ca. Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News. 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
What's it like to be in the restaurant business these days? Let's ask Dom Santaguida, owner, Vittoria, Trattoria. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
And surviving, day by
Surviving.
day.
Okay. How's business?
Generally, business has been pretty good. We've had good support from the community, generally.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dom.
No, you first.
Me first. Okay. The Ford government is expected to outline this week further plans for reopening Ontario that could lift capacity limits for businesses like yours. Dom, what are you hoping to hear?
Well, I'm hoping to be on the same playing field as the sporting venues. The gyms and restaurants have done really a great job of keeping their customers and patrons safe. I don't see why we were excluded when they lifted the capacity limits for, the Sens game where there was 15 or 16,000 people sitting shoulder to shoulder with most of the people not wearing masks.
What is the capacity limit for your business right now?
Well, with social distancing, we're about 80 people, which is about 50%, just over 50% capacity from where we were pre-COVID.
Right. And what challenges does that present for your business, being at 50% capacity right now?
Well, our overhead still is the same. We still require the same number of people to work. We're just not getting the production output from our employees that we could normally.
Right.
The marginal cost is less as you kind of increase your volume.
And now, look, last week's weather was fabulous, but a bit of a bite in the air this morning. So,
we won't have people be sitting outside. I doubt today. I mean, it was a challenge yesterday. We had a few people reserved for patio, but
right.
You know, not really a patio type of weather. We are checking vaccination cards now because according to provincial guidelines, unless you have 2 sides open or 3 sides open of a patio, it's considered inside space. And even there's gray area on understanding what is. I had a city councilor reach out to me asking me if I knew what the rule was.
Oh, okay. That's always encouraging. Okay.
Yeah.
That's always encouraging. All right. Have you had any issues from any customers with, asking
no,
for
not
proof
really.
of vaccine?
I mean, we've had a few kind of older people which have been vaccinated that either forgot theirs at home or didn't have it, couldn't find it on their phone. You know, all the challenges of people showing up basically unprepared.
Right.
I think for every 9 people that show up prepared, there's at least 9 people that are showing up unprepared.
And what do you tell your staff if somebody kicks up a fuss?
Well, we don't argue with people. They call someone who's senior. I mean, we have, you know, the minute I say it now, we're going to have a situation today. But we have not had to turn anyone away. Anyone who doesn't have their vaccination card can sit out on the patio. But I don't foresee too many problems. You know, for Ottawa, people are mostly compliant.
That's good.
I have taken the word of a 9-year-old lady who told me she was vaccinated and not have to make her go back home to get her vaccination card.
Okay, all right. Dom Santaguida's with us. He's the owner of Vittoria Trattoria restaurant here in Ottawa. What can you tell us about staffing right now? How difficult is it to find staff, to keep staff? Give us a sense at your operation there, Dom.
Well, all summer we were looking for 5 additional staff to work in the front of the house and 5 additional staff to work in the kitchen. Now with our reduced capacity, we're now going to have to start limiting the hours for people that are currently employed by us. You know, so the summer we needed 10 more people. Now we need 10 less people. And it's going to be a challenge for us to make sure we have hours for everyone who wants to work, as our capacity went from 100 and change to less than 80.
Okay. So it's not a question of actually finding people to work. You're not really having an issue. You'd like to be able to give them more hours, but you can't because of the capacity limits. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, we were at over capacity. Like everybody was working mega hours all summer for the last 4 or 5 months, and now for the next 4 or 5 months, unless we see restrictions lifted for indoor capacity, we're not going to have enough work for people.
And how do you handle it as the owner of a family restaurant with your staff and do you have your own vaccine mandate at Vittoria Trattoria? How do you handle that as a boss?
We've required people to be vaccinated in order to work here.
Okay.
We haven't had any situations where people have refused.
Okay.
And I feel sympathetic for people that don't want to get their vaccine. It's a reality of life. If you want to do something, you need to be vaccinated. So thankfully, we're not in a situation where we've had to terminate people or not have people come into work because they're not vaccinated.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Now, people who go grocery shopping are starting to, see the higher energy, higher gasoline prices, supply chain disruptions reflected in their grocery bills, for example. What about you in the restaurant business, Dom? What are the food cost pressures right now?
Well, we're seeing the same thing. We're seeing supply chain issues. We're seeing costs go up, 20, 30, 40%. And we're unable to get product when we're ready to get product. Or we order something one week, we don't get it, and then we order it again the next week, and then we get 5 of them. It seems pretty inconsistent.
And is it with certain foodstuffs, for example, or is it alcohol? Is it the proteins? Is it vegetables, or is it kind of run the gamut?
It runs the gamut. It's all random things, and it's things that would normally be readily available are unable to find. Basic bar staples. The LCBO, the shelves are empty, and we often have to go to multiple stores to find something. And even though it says in their inventory that they have 10 in stock or 12 in stock or 50 in stock, those items aren't actually there when we go to get them.
Okay. And what about like restaurant hardware, glasses? I heard there's a glass shortage, for example. Glasses, dinnerware, those kinds of things.
We haven't really experienced anything like that yet.
Okay. All right.
We have on some dishes. It took 6 weeks to get side plates.
Okay. All
Now
right.
we don't need them.
Isn't that weird? Okay. Do you do takeout?
Yes, we do.
And how's that going right now?
It's going well.
Okay.
We're really overwhelmed by the amount of support that the community has given to us, both to us as a business and to our staff, and how generous people have been. It's really heartwarming and makes you get up in the morning with a sense of want to get to work and make sure people are happy when they come into your business.
Okay. Look, CERB for a lot of people was a lifeline when things were locked down, but this income relief program is about to expire on Saturday. Now, some people say it's partly to blame for it being so difficult to find workers in certain industries. Is it time to wind down a program like that? What do you think?
Well, I think the program should have been offered to employers to bring people back to work, and for the employer to be able to pay the employee. The wage subsidy was certainly a big help to us.
Okay.
And as a result, we did hire back a bunch of people, and we're actively looking for more people. But the incentive for someone to go out and work, especially a younger person who could make the same money by staying home unchecked, it's really difficult to kind of engage somebody to perform at a job.
What's happening with your Byward Market location?
Well, we have plans to rebuild. We're still in the bureaucratic queue, as they say, to get approval.
So you're hopeful. You're hopeful. Yeah.
We are hopeful, but if you don't push, you kind of don't get. We really haven't been in a pushy type of mood with the city in the sense that we're going to reopen and have no one at our doors. So the hope is to start rebuilding next year and be ready by the end of 22 or beginning of 2023.
Okay. Dom, thank you so much again for this morning. All the best.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Keep up the good work.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Dom Santaguida is the owner of Vittoria, Trattoria. Neil Malhotra is the chief financial officer of Claridge Homes. He weighs in on the official plan. Coming up next on City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, October 18th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 7 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. Ground and water searchers out in force today as the hunt for a missing 35-year-old man continues now for a fourth day. Brett O'Grady was last seen Thursday in the East End around Aviation Parkway. The Shopify treasurer was last seen in the area of Aviation Parkway, and so far, police and volunteers, along with water and air support, have been searching for him. A full story is up at ottawa.citynews.ca. City staff spend part of their weekend poring over a large document from Rideau Transit Group. Today, City Manager Steve Kanellakos will be updating City Council on the company plan to return the rail system to service. If elected, Ontario Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca says his party will introduce ranked ballots and also consider the possibility of a 4-day work week. Del Duca was speaking at his party's annual general meeting in North York over the weekend. Colin Powell, former Joint Chiefs Chairman and Secretary of State in the United States, has died from COVID-19 complications. According to his family, in an announcement on social media, Powell had been fully vaccinated. He was the first African American to serve as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Secretary of State. Colin Powell, dead at the age of 84. City News Time, 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
It's been the mother of all city meetings, with a committee of councillors hearing from the public about the city's new official plan. And one very interested observer is my next guest. He is the chief financial officer of one of Ottawa's best-known property development firms, Claridge Homes. A pleasure to welcome to City News, Neil Malhotra. Good morning, Mr. Malhotra.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a great pleasure to hear from you. I understand we've tracked you down at the Montreal airport, so we'll find you anywhere. Okay, great stuff. Look, I want your general thoughts. I know you've been paying particularly close attention to it. On the city's official plan, what do you think of it, generally speaking?
I think we've got a interesting challenge. We're doing this in a time period where the world is changing a little bit, right? And one of the big changes, over the last few years, prior to the pandemic, Ottawa's growth started to really accelerate. We're one of the fastest growing cities in North America in 2019. And so I think one of the biggest probably challenges for the city now is in the official plan is, we started planning for a city of 1.4 million people, and it's now more likely a city of about 1.5 million people in the next 25 years based on the Ministry of Finance's data at the province. So we got a challenge of how we got to accommodate all these people. And then we got to balance out the challenges we have in the housing market today, which is, simply we don't have enough houses for our existing population. And that's led to, enormous price increases just in the last 2-3 years. The houses have become much more expensive since 2017. And the data, Scotiabank put out a great study on sort of showing how the number of houses that exist in populations in the other G7 countries, and when you look at the average in G7, we're looking at about 478 homes per 1,000 people, typically, whereas Canada is falling in the range of 420 homes per 1,000 people. And quite frankly, Ottawa is down to about 403 homes per 1,000 people. So, it's very, very clear indications there's a shortfall of housing, and we have to figure out ways to increase our housing stock quickly, and not just to accommodate the 1.5 million people, but how do we increase the housing stock to the existing population.
So how would you score the official plan then at striking the right balance?
Well, I think the reality is the current official plan as proposed right now is it's going to lead to higher home prices. We're not planning for enough homes. we're trying to make shifts in how people live. We're trying to be obviously more conscious of what we're doing to the climate. So, that's where you hear about the big buzzwords around intensification. And, at the end of the day, the official plan, primary decisions being made, how much of the new population is going to be in intensified neighborhoods versus in new neighborhoods that would be typically suburban neighborhoods. So it's an ambitious goal to provide 50% of our housing inside the existing community in the next 25 years. I think it poses some challenges, and our company in particular, we thrive on intensification. We're involved in a lot of the big proposals around town. We've built a lot of the units that have been built in the existing fabric of our city over the last 20 years. So, I think we're probably over relying a little bit on intensification. But might be the right decision for the climate at the end of the day. But that's to be seen. But the cost of that is, if we're wrong on that decision, is again we have that shortfall of where people want to live, and we don't have enough houses, and it triggers more and more costs in the lack of supply of housing. A house may cost $100,000 more out of this official plan. We've seen land prices since the city first decided on how much they feel the city would need to grow in number of sectors. Land prices in the city have gone up 50%. So that's pretty significant in an 18-month, 2-year period.
Okay, I just want to jump in there because you've said some things I want to probe a bit deeper on. So if I asked you, will the measures in the official plan make housing more affordable or less affordable, you're saying less affordable.
Less affordable, without question.
Less affordable.
It's written right into the document. The document specifically discusses balancing design priorities with the affordability of housing.
Okay. And you use this figure, $100,000. Can you give that figure some context? Are you saying a brand new house that costs $700,000 now would end up costing $800,000 because of the measures in the official plan? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, essentially over a very short period of time. And in that number, I'm including how land's increased already. But there's kind of a death by 1,000 cuts when it comes to any policy, and we're making several measures to we have goals of having to have more trees planted in the city. On lots that we're trying to add more units on. We're trying to take an old existing single-family home and turn it into 3, 4, 5 units. But then we also want to make sure we're protecting the tree canopy. So you get into a tree technology, it costs $15,000 a tree to plant a tree where it has substandard soil surroundings. So it's things like that. We have policies come to community benefit policies. We spend approximately $1,000 a unit on new buildings now to make sure birds don't hit the windows. There's all sorts of layers of policies, and it's $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 at a time, but that's what's all contributing to a higher cost house at the end of the day.
Right. Well, let's talk, let's use that as a baseline. A $700,000 house is just kind of your average run-of-the-mill house in Ottawa these days because of the way things have appreciated. For a new build, something sold by Clearage homes that costs, say, in that price range, $750,000. How much of that right now is what I would call, in air quotes, government? Fees, taxes, whatever you have to pay as a developer and then pass along to the actual end customer, Mr. Malhotra?
The number's significant, right? In terms of a direct percentage, you've got a series of direct fees that go to the municipalities. I mean, even things like, how we changed when we transferred to an HST policy, created more taxes on homes. It's one of the few products that didn't. Houses were one of the products when the HST was incorporated that did not maintain sort of a similar sales tax. It significantly increased. It's easily $150,000 that goes to the government on the cost of a home today, if not more. But that doesn't then factor in all the design policies, right? Like we want to, when we have ambitions to say, hey, you got to do a house with, this extra environmental technology. We need to have this house that has these types of materials. We need a house a glass that doesn't have reflection, so the birds can't hit it.
Right.
These layers, these things actually are the death by 1,000 cuts. So that's additional policy stuff that becomes very difficult because some of the taxes and development charges, they're very critical for us to build the infrastructure to support the houses. But it's the layers of regulation, that get added on into the process. It's the cost of application fees to implement the kind of housing the city wants, but the city has never implemented through zoning, and that's why you have to read about all these zoning applications the development industry makes. The zoning work's never been done. A typical application fee is, could be $20,000 to apply for a 50-unit building. So it's layers and layers of items, and it's just we're not taking affordability probably seriously enough in this current environment when it's such a hot topic.
Okay, I want to ask you, just generally speaking, about a couple of projects that you have on the go around Carling and Preston. That seems to be the hot place these days. For example, you're building the Icon. How's that doing?
It's going well, and it's a long construction process. It's new technologies in constructing a building like that, but we'll be first people will be moving in the next few weeks.
In the next few weeks, yeah. And it's sold well, Mr. Malhotra? Sold well? Yep.
It has. Yeah, it has. I mean, apartments in Ottawa, they don't sell like they do in Toronto. We have a population much more focused on single-family homes and townhomes and things like that. So, but it's done. The project itself is done quite well.
Okay, and as I understand it, pretty much right across the street where there's a CIBC branch, your firm wants to have another tower there, 60 stories. Is that correct, Mr. Malhotra?
Yes.
Yeah?
So we've.
And you think the city will go for that 60 stories?
Well, it's interesting. I think one place the city of Ottawa has really matured over the last 15, 20 years is that we do understand we do need high density at transit stations. Carling Preston is a unique neighborhood that does have a very strong transit presence to the north-south transit line. So, I don't suspect, the height is probably going to be one of the least discussed items, I would imagine, through this planning application. I think we'll be discussing a lot more how the building interacts with the street. I think we'll be discussing, I suspect the community will want to discuss housing affordability will be a big issue for them. That's a maturing city, and those are good things. I think that's the tall buildings is not where the friction is in intensification today. Today, the intensification friction is more in the existing single-family neighborhoods and seeing the single-family homes convert into even 2 units can be a lot of conflict in Westboro.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mr. Malhotra, but it seems as though the property development community here in Ottawa has, really embraced what the city likes to call transit-oriented development. But we haven't had light rail running in this city for 28 days. Has that made you rethink it all? Transit-oriented?
Not yet. I mean, 28 days in for city planning is, you can't make any judgments yet. I think everybody will have to, until there's conclusions, until there's a conclusion to the whole thing. I think we're still planning. The city's still planning as if the transit system will operate at 100% function at some point.
Okay. Listen, safe travels wherever you're going today. Thank you for the time today.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, bye-bye. Neil Malhotra is the CFO of Claridge Homes.
This hour of the Rob Snow.
An old-fashioned traditional grocery store. You're going to find a butcher, okay? You want a steak cut a certain way, you're going to get it. There's flour piled in the warehouse. There's mixers on the floor. There's flour on the floor. The bakery is rented out to Frank Nicolo. It's him and his son come in at night. They mix the dough, they roll the dough, and they bake the dough. It's not the traditional frozen and thaw and put it in the bin, okay? It's made from scratch 7 days a week. It's probably the only bakery left in Ottawa that does that. Then customer service. We're big on that. The cashiers, the deli, you're not, if you ask for something, they're not going to point, it's an aisle number 7. They're going to bring you there, okay? If you have too much groceries out, we'll take it out to your car. You know what I mean? There's nothing we don't do for our customers. And we evolved around our customers. They would come in and say, you know, can you try getting me this? You know, can you get me this? So that's how we built the lineup we have now, okay? So we have a lot of unique items that someone that came over to, you know, live in Canada hasn't seen this particular product, but we sourced it and we have it for them that, you know, like something they used to have as a kid. We have a lot of those unique items, a lot, you know, like all over the world. And we source it through, you know, distributors in Montreal and Toronto that bring in the product in bulk, and we piggyback off of them. Probably the largest European deli in Ottawa. We sell lots because people buy lots. It's nothing really complicated about that. You know, we turn over a lot of product. You know, we package it properly. We buy, and we're always consistent. You know, you're always going to buy, you know, Cuddy turkey breast, you know, San Daniel mortadella. You're always going to get the same brands. We don't flip back and forth to save 20 cents. It's always the same brands, the last 29 years. Best sandwiches in town. It's simple. It starts off with fresh bread every day baked in the store. Anything that's left over goes to breadcrumbs. So you're getting a fresh bun every day that was baked probably 4 hours before you get here, okay? Not only baked, made, like, you know, mix the flour, roll the dough, proof the bread, and bake the bread, okay? Then all the ingredients come right off the shelves. You know, your lettuce, your tomatoes, all your condiments, and they're cut up fresh in the deli. Not like the big, you know, corporate restaurant chains that your lettuce comes in shredded in a bag, you open it up and you throw it in the bin. You know, takes, you know, 2 or 3 days to get here from California. How long is it in the bag? The big difference is like making a sandwich at home and you don't have to do the work. It's really what the trick is, and using the freshest ingredients possible.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Every Monday morning, we're joined by Barry McLoughlin, Senior Partner at TransformLeaders.ca, Senior Fellow with the Masters of Political Management program at Carleton University. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm great. I hope you had a wonderful weekend.
I did. Yeah, I did. Even though it was kind of a rainy weekend, it's still, you know, we're still, I think, cresting slightly above the temperatures. It's a lot of fun. I'm actually enjoying myself this fall.
That's good. We've had a splendid fall so far,
yeah,
I must say.
We really have.
Yes. The Prime Minister is scheduled to visit Kamloops, British Columbia today, and the community where there are believed to be some 200 unmarked graves at the site of a former residential school. But what can Justin Trudeau say now to make amends for not accepting the earlier invitation to visit this community during the first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation?
Well, I think you always have to begin by repeating and being very deeply felt apology once again directly to the chief and to the community. They invited him to come, and he kind of ignored their invitation. So he's got to be profoundly apologetic. He's got to also demonstrate what are we doing going forward. Here's his opportunity to say that with regard to this very painful file. You know, he's got to go through this period of time. But in the end, they're going to say, well, you know, let's see what action you're going to implement. I mean, talk is cheap, and I think for First Nations people, they've had 100 and some years of cheap talk, and they're looking for serious action.
Right. Whenever it comes now to Indigenous issues and truth and reconciliation, certainly something that the Prime Minister had at the forefront of his party's identity and his government's identity. Isn't it always going to have now a kind of caveat to it, Barry, because of his decision to take that trip to Tofino on that day?
Oh, I actually don't think so. I think it's an asterisk. So? It's a little asterisk there. I guess it's, you know, something that will get mentioned, but I don't think, you know, to be fair to him, I mean, he has made the whole sweep of First Nations issues a priority. He has certainly made major steps forward. We've got to give him some credit for that.
Okay.
And he's only halfway through doing what he needs to do. I mean, I actually worked for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in its earliest year, and so I'm very familiar with the mandate, the priorities, and they want action. Same with the MMIWG, Murdered Missing Indigenous Women and Girls. I worked on that commission.
Oh, okay.
And they're looking for action on theirs. So there's lots of action to be done, and I think, this is a first step on a continuing long journey.
Do you think progress is being made, though? Yes?
Yeah, I do think so. I mean,
right.
I think this has been a setback, but I don't think it's gone back to ground zero. I think First Nations chiefs that I know personally have always been willing to give him a chance, and they think his heart's in the right place from what I've discussed with them. But they're not going to be bought off with anything that's just another empty promise. They want to see action, and they're very specific in their actions. So I think that he has a major agenda going forward in this Parliament.
Okay. Let's turn to local issues here. And, light rail, 28 days now and counting, 28 days.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this last week, the call for a public inquiry into the problems at LRT, which you said last week you weren't in favor of that, right? No. Ridiculous, I think, or preposterous or something, I think was the word.
By the way, I mean, I thought about that a little bit. If they actually somehow were to engineer a direct vote on it, and let's say the council votes in favor of it, well, actually, for Jim Watson, that's not necessarily a big negative, because I know he's against it, but in the end, it gets shoved behind the cloaks of legality in a judicial inquiry. They're usually not as open, as transparent as you want them to be, and it delays all outcomes until after the election. So to me, that's not really a big issue. I think that if he's going to go into a re-election campaign with continuing problems with the LRT, that's going to be, the big burden he has. This has to get fixed. What happened to lead us to it? Yes, we do want to know that. But I think it's getting it fixed, getting it up, getting it reliable. He must make that happen. And I think he knows that. Yeah, I think that, and I think he's kind of, he is trying to get the positioning right, which is to hold the feet to the fire of the companies involved, because we are the clients and the city council is acting on our behalf, holding their feet to the fire. So I think he's figured that relationship out. He's getting obviously very frustrated by it, but it's got to happen. It's got to turn around.
A lot of people are really frustrated with light rail, and you can see how it's causing great tension just among the councillors. I said to one of them last week, I'm glad you're not in the same room together. You'd be at each other the way things are going. But it got hot and heavy during one of the council Zoom calls last week, and Jim Watson he issued a rare public apology to Councillor Diane Dean. So we're going to play again just to kind of reset it, how that all went down during the council meeting. Go ahead.
I was asked to the city clerk prior to the mayor intervening. I have every right as a member of this council to ask the city clerk to pronounce on this issue. Is it a reasonable substitution or...
All right, so we're going to the vote now.
All right. And he cut her off. And then the next day apologized via Twitter. About what did you think about how that went down?
Well, I think it's very rare, but it was the right thing to do to apologize to her. I mean, Robert's rules are pretty clear in the process. That should have been Robert Rules order, and it wasn't. And obviously, his frustration showed. He did apologize. Diane Deans is very good at turning that into, still pushing to get the direct vote on whether or not we have a judicial inquiry. But in the end, I think when it boils down to going forward into this election year municipally, it's one thing to say that there's wrong, that there are problems. Yes. Now, who's the candidate that knows how to fix it? Who's the candidate that's going to move this whole thing forward? Are we going to just abandon it and throw billions of dollars down the tube, or are we going to have? What is the solution to this? Is it just always going to be an inquiry, or what action would you take if you were mayor? I think it's going to boil down to that in the election campaign.
Okay. What do you think Jim Watson's political future is? I can't remember him ever losing an election because he has such a an impeccable sense of timing about when to jump in and when to jump out. So
he's a very, very strong candidate. He's a very, very strong political, leader. He has great instincts politically. Very, very tough to take him down. Mind you, we're in the mood of change. I mean, if the mood really continues, who wins elections are in a mood of change. It's change versus more of the same. That becomes the ballot question.
Right.
It was for Larry O'Brien in his first election, change versus more of the same. Yeah. And if you like more of the same, then you're going to keep him in. If you want change, that's a very, very powerful ballot question. So we don't know this quite yet.
Okay. Coming up after the 10 o'clock news, we're going to talk about the Canada Recovery Benefit, the second version of the CERB, which is set to expire coming up on Saturday. This replaced the original CERB. Nothing from the government yet. There'll certainly be calls, I would think, from the New Democrats to extend a program like that. But do you think the economy's recovered enough, the jobs market has recovered enough that the government can wind that program down now, Barry?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it is the barrier to getting people back into the workforce. Just talk to the local small business owners. They can make that kind of money. Even I realize it's less than the CERB was, but it's still a pretty comfortable payment to get for many, many people versus having to work 40 hours a week. So I think that has to end. And I think that going back to the EI, it's a legitimate program. There are very clear criteria, and it shouldn't be a drag on the economy. Mind you, you made the good point. The NDP are not in favor of that. He better have something to somehow sweeten the offer. I think what's he going to offer small business owners is a really critically important question. They're barely surviving, and they're trying to get going again. What offer has he got on the table for them, I think, is critically important.
So maybe an end to CERB, but an extension of things like wage subsidy and rent relief.
Yeah, there has to be something like this. I don't think you can cut it all off, but we got to get people back to work, and I think that's the only way the economy moves forward. So hopefully they've got something creative up their sleeve, but they can't continue this. The Auditor General is very hard and hit hard on some of the very major deficits of that CERB program, and I don't think throwing that kind of money when the economy is in this shape, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think even the government thinks necessarily it's a good idea. It's a question of what will they're a minority government, so they got to get support from the opposition. And, let's see what it is that they're going to buy for. A little bit of pre-positioning might be important here with them.
Okay. Thank you, Barry.
My pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of your week. It was great to hear from you this morning.
Great. Thank you.
Barry McLoughlin, Senior Partner at TransformLeaders.ca. Well, we've reached the talkback hour, and I want to do a rapid poll with the CRB Canada Recovery Benefit set to expire on Saturday. Do you want the government to extend it or let it go? It's time to move beyond CERB. What's your opinion on that? At 750-1310 after the news on City News.
1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, October 18th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Ottawa City Council will be getting an LRT update from the city manager today. Steve Kanalakos wrote to Council early on Friday evening saying they have received the extensive report from Rideau Transit Group concerning the return to service. After staff reviewed it over the weekend, Kanalakos will update Council today. City News time 10:02, and now your forecast from City News meteorologist Jill Taylor. Cloudy and cool today, a high of 10. Partly cloudy tonight, down to 3, and then a little bit warmer, a little bit sunnier tomorrow with a high of 17. The search continues for a missing Shopify executive, Brett O'Grady, whose online profile have him listed as treasurer at Shopify, has been missing since Thursday morning. Last seen around Aviation Parkway and Avro Circle in the East End. Now, the wooded area has been canvassed over the weekend. Water, shoreline, and drone searches were initiated as well. Anyone with any information is asked to contact police. We do have a full description and pictures up of Brett on our website, ottawa.citynews.ca. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau scheduled to spend today with the First Nation in Kamloops, BC.
Today's visit comes 2 weeks after Trudeau apologized to the Tk'emlúps te Secwépemc for not helping them mark Canada's first ever National Day for Truth and Reconciliation and instead traveling to Vancouver Island with his family. Tk'emlúps leaders have said Trudeau's apology doesn't interest them. Instead of words, they're demanding real change, such as healing centers for residential school survivors or full access to residential school records. Today begins with comments from Trudeau and Tk'emlúps Chief Rosanne Casimir. Then they'll join regional and national Indigenous leaders for a ceremony with the Tk'emlúps community, followed by a chance for everyone to comment on the day's events. Beth Layton, The Canadian Press.
City News time at 10:03. Former U.S. Joint Chiefs Chairman and Secretary of State Colin Powell has died from COVID-19 complications.
This is a special report from ABC News. I'm Mark Remillard. Former Secretary of State Colin Powell has died. He was 84 years old. Powell was the first black Secretary of State and came to be known for his military leadership during the Gulf War. Again, former Secretary of State Colin Powell has died at the age of 84. This has been a special report from ABC News.
City News time at 10:04. Just getting the new numbers from the province on the number of COVID-19 cases today. 373 is a report from the province. And the province does say 36 of these cases are in Ottawa, 8 in Eastern Ontario, 4 in Renfrew. Leeds, Grenville, Lanark just has 1 new case of COVID-19 today. We're expecting to hear an update from the provincial government this week about capacity limits for restaurants, bars, and gyms. Dom Santaguida is the owner of Vittoria Trattoria restaurant and tells City News what he would like to see.
I'm hoping to be on the same playing field as the sporting venues. The gyms and restaurants have done really a great job of keeping their customers and patrons safe. I don't see why we were excluded when they lifted the capacity limits for, the Sens game.
Now, Dom says he's currently at roughly 50% capacity in his business, yet items like overhead costs remain the same. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
First talkback hour of the week. Let's get right into it. Doing a rapid poll. Keep track, keep score. Yes or no? Why not? Should the CERB, the Canada Recovery Benefit, expire as scheduled this coming Saturday, October 23rd? Or should the CERB be extended? Should it be extended beyond Saturday? Every line available right now, 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. That's how I want to start the first talk back hour of the new week with this rapid poll about the CERB, Canada Recovery Benefit. This is the income relief program that replaced the original CERB, the CERB with the E. Canada Emergency Response Benefit. That's CERB. And again, my question for you during the talkback hour is this one. Should the federal government end the CERB once and for all as scheduled? This week it's served its purpose, but now it's time to let it go. How do you answer that question? Yes, no, why? Why not? I want to take as many calls as I can here during the hour on the CERB. The CRB. It's all over the NEWS. Okay. Headlines, headlines, headlines. Read all about it, about the looming end of CERB. Where CERB ends. Economists watch labor market, GDP as pandemic benefits wind down, says the report in the Financial Post. End of CERB and EI to cause major risks for consumption rates and financial outlook, says economists. That's a headline at BNN. COVID-19 pandemic benefits set to expire this week for Canadian businesses and individuals, reports CTV. And Liberals considering whether to extend expiring pandemic supports for businesses and individuals, reports the CBC. So the deadline is soon to be here, Saturday, okay, on the CERB. What should we do? What do you want the government to do? What should happen to that CRB program, that CERB program? Is it time that we move beyond that? I've never collected the CERB. Okay. Never collected it. I've been lucky. Okay. I've always had work throughout the pandemic. I am one of the lucky ones. I do consider myself one of the lucky ones. But I also wonder if it's time to move beyond what, I mean, the CERB is more of an income supplement program than an income relief program, really. But it's supposed to end on Saturday. Should it? Let's get right into it here and see how many calls we can take in the hour. Brockville up first. Good morning, Mike. You're on City News. Mike.
Good morning. First-time caller, long-time listener.
Greatly appreciated, Mike. Should the CERB expire as scheduled on Saturday? Yes or no?
Oh, it should have been gone months ago.
Oh, really? Okay. Why do you say that, sir?
Get them back to work. We have a welfare system for that.
Well, we have EI with I guess if you're in really bad shape, you could qualify for Ontario Works or something. But there is a traditional EI program where you pay premiums and get employment insurance for people who lose their jobs, right? So
which lasts a year.
Yeah. Okay. And maybe some tweaks can be made to EI because one of the big complaints about EI is it's hard to qualify for EI. People traditionally people paid into EI, but gosh, you'd need a note from God in order to collect it sometimes. So yeah. But you think it's time to get rid of that program?
Oh, definitely.
Do you think it's get back to work? Do you think it's a disincentive for people to work? A disincentive? You think it's acting as a disincentive to work? Yes,
definitely.
Yes.
Why would you work when you can stay at home and get paid?
Well, I mean, now it's only $600 every 2 weeks. I mean, you're not going to live like a king on $600 every 2 weeks, right? So.
Yeah, I suppose. But
yeah, like it's not $2,000 a month. It's not $2,000 a month anymore. It's $1,200 a month now, gross.
We need to get the economy rolling.
Get the economy rolling. Okay, Mike. Thank you. Yep. Yeah, Canada Recovery Benefit. This is what it says right at the Government of Canada's website. Canada Recovery Benefit gives income support to employed and self-employed individuals who are directly affected by COVID-19 and are not entitled to EI. CRB administered by CRA. Depending on when you start applying for the CRB, you can either receive $1,000 or $900 after taxes, or $600, $540 after taxes for a 2-week period. If your situation continues, you need to apply again. You may apply for a total of 27 eligibility periods, which is 54 weeks. Between September 27th, 2020 and October 23rd of 2021, the deadline, which is coming this week. That's the date, October 23rd of this year, this Saturday. CERB is supposed to expire. Is it time to let CERB expire? 750-1310 in Stittsville. Richard, good morning. You're on City News. Richard.
morning, Rob.
Morning, Richard. Is it time to let CERB expire?
Absolutely.
And why do you say that?
I agree with what you said before. You said it's tough to qualify for EI, and I think that's the issue with CERB is it was too easy to qualify for it.
Okay.
A lot of people are. You said it's down to $600 every 2 weeks, but that's still enough for a lot of people not to go into those minimum wage paying jobs and stuff like that. There's a lot of businesses that are hurting. You drive down the Carp Road or anywhere in Sittsville, there's even Mark's Work Warehouse had to close a couple hours early last week because they didn't have anybody in to cover the hours.
Yeah, I'm hearing more and more about this. Businesses closing for hours at a time now, or used to have overnight shifts or late hours. They just can't find people to work those hours anymore.
Yeah,
so.
Little businesses, they can support them and help them with rent, but they can't. They don't have workers to bring in any money.
Right. Okay.
There's no help there.
Okay, so end the CERB.
Yeah,
End
absolutely.
the CERB. Okay, as scheduled on Saturday. Okay, thank you. 750-1310. 750-1310. 2 calls in. 2 yays to ending the CERB. Let's keep it going. Armand in Ottawa. Good morning, Armand.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, I think it's time to end it now.
You do? Okay.
It's done its course, and it's time to put people back to work. I think they're having a hard time going back to work. That's a problem.
What do you mean?
They sort of kind of, I don't really feel like working to the attitude now.
Oh, okay.
So we kind of have to break that cycle and send them back to work.
Kind of rip the Band-Aid off, so to speak, Armand.
Yeah, that's all over now. Yeah, it's just get back to normal.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep. The CERB is supposed to expire on Saturday, along with several other relief measures for businesses and individuals. Should the CERB, CRB, Canada Recovery Benefit, expire on Saturday. And we'll move on into a post-CERB era here in Canada. Cindy in Canada. Cindy, good morning. You're on City News.
Hi. Yeah.
Hi, Cindy.
Time to retire it.
Time to retire. Okay.
The holidays are coming. The small business need the extra workers to try to make up for all the lost revenues and, get things going. We're talking about capacity. You can increase the capacity, but if you don't have employees, it's a losing game for small business.
So you're convinced, Cindy, that it's acting as a disincentive to work, that there are people who aren't working because the CERB is available there as kind of like a backstop for them?
I know people that are not working.
Oh, you do know people. Okay.
Yeah, so.
Really? Okay.
A little kick in the butt.
A kick in the butt. Okay, Cindy. Tough love, I guess, Cindy. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your call.
Bye.
This is the Rob Snow Show Talkback Hour. The CERB is set to expire on Saturday. Should it, or should it be extended? 750-1310. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
It's a space that needs to be lived in. It's a space that people, have to have an experience of more than just art on the walls. I think, yes, the art on the walls is fun, and it's fun to walk around and see all the beautiful things, and the way Dominic and Edith have curated the gallery is certainly something worth seeing. But coming by and asking questions, again, to Dominic's point of view is, interrupt him, ask questions. I'm here on most of the days too. We have Luce that comes in, Nancy that comes in. So yeah, we have quite a few opportunities for people to come in and see the process, and of course ask a few questions. It's a great space. Basically, the one event that we did do is the jazz shows, the jazz and blues shows. And I think the weird thing to let you know is that the acoustics in here are really amazing. I think that was the first thing that blew me away when we started doing shows, or when I was helping out with the shows. And the other part of the business too is we do rent it out for special occasions too. So a few weddings, birthday parties, product launches, that kind of thing. So they're also a lot of fun. We do have one artist that's from the States, but of the 30-odd artists, the rest are from either Quebec, Ontario, and one beautiful woman from BC. But yeah, it's definitely part of the philosophy to maintain and canvas and show the beauty that we have in our backyard. You have the very, very strong personalities in Edith and Dominic, of course. It's wonderful to see how that actually balances out in the rest of the gallery. Without necessarily being, an objective, we basically have half female artists and half male artists in this gallery. But I can't say it's anything more than choosing the best people, and that's just the way it is. And I love that. I think it's great. You go through and you're like, wow, it's all pretty cool. And yep, it's half are women and half are men. It's cool. Like everyone else, we didn't know what to think, right? It's overwhelming at first. You just know that things are closed. And now you're trying to figure out what you do during that downtime, which I think everyone did. And I think in March, the first close, the first shutdown, it was a lot of actually recuperating and resting and not worrying too much on the spot. It's running a gallery is a bit like running a marathon with sprints. So there comes a time where, it's actually nice to just take a break. And then you wake up and realize that, okay, now it's time to wake up and deal with this new reality. From my perspective anyways, I think a gallery can be overwhelming, and I like to make it fun. So you're going to come in, I'll ask you questions, I might even joke around with you. The most people come here, they're not really going to buy art, but they could have a fun time and talk about it, right? And one of the things the gallery does offer is for local purchases. We'll be happy to drive it to your house and hang it for you.
Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
And our question this morning, 3 lines available there for you. We're doing a talkback rapid poll. Should the CERB, the Canada Recovery Benefit, expire on Saturday? It's supposed to expire come Saturday. Should it be allowed to expire come Saturday, or because the Trudeau Liberals are already facing some calls to extend the CERB? Should it be extended? I don't know, say until the end of the year, till we get through the Christmas shopping season or something. I don't know. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. I was just reading a little bit more about the CRB and how much it pays out. The government says that if you applied for CRB before July 18th of this year, your CERB amount is reduced after you receive 21 payments. You get a payment every 2 weeks. First 21 payments, $1,000 or $900 after tax. And then after 21 payments, it goes to a $600 gross or $540 after tax until you reach the maximum 27 periods or 54 weeks. And if you started collecting the CRB after July 17th of this year, you get $600 or $540 after tax for each 2-week period until the CRB ends, and it's supposed to end on Saturday. I mean, it's $540 every 2 weeks. Okay, it's not exactly a winning Lotto Max ticket. But the thing is, you can earn other income before the CRB is clawed back. This was always one of the key features of the CERB program. People collecting CRB could earn up to $38,000 in net income during the calendar year before there was anything clawed back. And then you have to reimburse 50 cents on the dollar, every CERB dollar, of net income that you earn over $38,000. So it was kind of an income supplement program rather than an income replacement program. But whatever you want to call it, should it end? Should we get past the CERB days of the pandemic? Do you think the economy is recovered enough? Do you think the jobs market is healthy enough that people will find jobs? Brian, good morning, Brian. You're on City News.
Good morning, Rob.
Morning, Brian. What do you think, sir?
So I have kind of mixed motions about this.
Okay.
One, I do agree with your callers, or most of your callers, that say, we should get rid of it because it is a strain on our economy, and it's more taxes that we're going to have to pay over the long term and everything.
Right.
But I also look at it from a different point of view, too. My wife, who is a travel agent, her business imploded when this whole pandemic thing happened, and she lost all of her clients. And yes, slowly they're starting to trickle in, but some of them have postponed their vacations until next year or even further out, and she actually doesn't get paid until they've traveled. So she's yet to face probably another year of no income. So she has gone out and found other employment at this point just to help our financial needs within our home.
Okay.
But, you know, it does also, like, she sat on the original CERB for a year, and she said to me, you know, I'm not going to go out and get a job because I'm being paid to stay home. So I can kind of see it from both sides. Yes, it does create, if you want to call it a laziness on certain people's behalf to stay on it, but it does need to end because we're just going to be paying for it in the long term.
Okay. You're kind of fence-sitting by the sounds of things, Brian. Okay.
Exactly.
I'm making you, you're Prime Minister Brian for the next 30 seconds. You've got to make a choice. Saturday is coming, okay? Saturday.
Unfortunately, I would have to say it's time for it to go.
Time for it to
even
go.
Even though, selfishly, I don't want it to go.
Okay. I understand, Brian. With mixed emotions, Brian says, makes the leadership decision and cuts his wife's income. Harsh. You have some splaining to do. 750-1310, 750-1310. The deadline looms for the CERB. Should the CERB be extended beyond Saturday's deadline? Or should it be allowed to go to money heaven? Lynn in Orleans. Lynn.
Oh, hi.
Hi,
Thank you
Lynn.
for taking my call.
Pleasure.
I have to tell you, I had to pull over because I'm literally shaking right now. I don't like the way that this poll is being addressed. I am a business owner who's been tremendously affected throughout this whole thing. Okay. And I think that you have to do a distinction between the person who's at home, who's maybe young and can work and maybe lives at home with a parent and they don't have any income, towards the business owner who has double everything. Everything's been decimated. They can't open to maximum capacity right now, and they're hanging by a thread.
Yes.
My business has been in business. I do in-person learning, and I've had my business for 18 years, never, ever, ever got a handout from the government. But since the pandemic, I have not able to open as fully off and on because of all the lockdowns. But my business, I make 90 to 95% a month. I like less than what I did pre-pandemic. In April, you know, that with the lockdown, they shut us all down.
Right.
Since July 15th, I'm stuck in stage 3. Stage 3 means I cannot have more than 25%. So the government's telling me that's acceptable for you to take a 75% pay decrease. Now, I don't see any of your callers saying, I'll take that, I'll take a 75%. Even if I can open at 25, people are not coming out. They want to stay home. They don't want to be. I'm just shaking right now because I don't agree that businesses should be lumped in. The CERB was never enough to help them. To be honest, it's.
So you're self-employed then, Lynn?
I'm self-employed.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And literally, the amount of debt, I have no idea how I'm going to get out of this debt. I would like to be open in full capacity, but people are hesitant right now. We're hearing warnings every day of fourth wave. And it's tough. I honestly don't know. Even if I could open tomorrow, be back to pre-pandemic levels, how I would ever get around.
Okay, so the CRB is supposed to expire on Saturday. What do you think should happen to it then?
I think there needs to be, I do agree that they need to get rid of it for those who, have not been affected through, financial means, a business owner. Don't distinguish, there has to be a disconnect. Business owners, I have been wanting to call in before to express concern, but like me, it's the pride, right? You're at bottom end, feeling like you're barely getting by, and it's hard to make a call to admit that. And I just don't know why for the government to sweep us all aside and say, okay, you're not going to help you.
Right. So maybe if there's some kind of new version of CERB, it should come with some kind of means test or something like that.
Right. I mean, they already do test you so much to make sure you qualify. But I mean, if I had to go from a minimum income I'm making right now, I don't know. Like you said before, I don't think I would qualify for EI. That money for EI is not near enough to pay my bills. Not near enough. And with the government telling me I'm non-essential, I don't know how I can pivot to doing something else. I had a very profitable business, and I don't know how I can pivot to doing something else with my life to make that same amount of income I was making.
Okay. Good luck, Lynn. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your perspective. Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Yep. 750-1310, 750-1310. Lynn is in a different kind of place than, say, the 19-year-old who's not going to their job at the fast food restaurant because they qualify for whatever, CRB. Metcalf. Al, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Rob.
Morning.
Rob, forgive me for sounding a little cynical, but I think the CERB should have been canceled a long time ago.
Okay.
I think it served its purpose once we had the election. I think it was nothing more than buying election votes.
Oh, really? Okay.
Last several months prior to the election. I could just imagine Justin Trudeau in the beginning of the year trying to time the election with continuing to extend CERB. The last thing he wanted was CERB to be canceled before going into an election. And like all the other callers, I don't know a small business that isn't crying for workers. I remember there was a plant in Brockville, a wire rope or cable plant, a large plant. They were begging for workers. They were going to train them. They were going to pay them $40,000, $50,000 a year.
Right.
Well, why go work at a factory in Brockville when you could stay at home and bring in $2,000 a month?
Yeah.
So
It's not $2,000 a month anymore. It's not $2,000.
Oh, no, it was back then, but now.
Yeah.
I think it should have been canceled long ago. I think it served its purpose for the Liberals. And if it goes any sort of assistance beyond this, I think it's time for you to play the Russian national anthem on the radio.
Okay, all right. Okay, Al. Thank you. We've reached halftime. It's the Talkback Hour. It's our first day back after the weekend. And we're doing a rapid poll on CERB, which is supposed to expire later this week. Should it? Or should it be extended by the Trudeau government? It's some kind of deal with the New Democrats. I'd love to hear from you at 750-1310 after the news. This is City News.
Now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, October 18th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 7 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. Another drop in the daily case count of COVID in our province. 373 more cases today, along with 2 more deaths. We have 36 new cases in Ottawa, 8 in Eastern Ontario, 4 Renfrew County. There is 1 new case in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. The province does say the positivity test rate is now at 1.8%. Over 20,400 tests were completed. The province now says anyone can go online and get their QR code showing your vaccination status. What was restricted late last week to your birth month is now open to anyone who hasn't received their QR code. That will be used to get into places like bars and restaurants. The owner of a local restaurant is hoping restrictions on their capacity is lifted later this week. The owner of Vittoria Trattoria says it seems unfair. Places like the CTC can be full. He's limited to 50%. The province is expected to make a statement on COVID restrictions later on this week. As the city continues working on official development plan, one local builder is warning the attempt to bolster housing stock quickly could result in an added $100,000 cost per home. Claridge Home says the plan doesn't properly account for the growth rate in Ottawa City. City News Time 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
It's going to be another busy week in news. Certainly it will be interesting to see what happens with the CERB and whether the Trudeau government will let the CERB expire as it is scheduled to do on Saturday. Imagine it, no more CERB. I mean, it's like being part of the pandemic vocabulary. CERB. Oh, he's collecting CERB. Oh, CERB. Well, Saturday's supposed to be the end of it. I'm asking, should it be? Now, overwhelmingly, so far, people are in favor of ending the CERB, thought it should have been done long ago. Another angle, I guess, and we have 3 lines available there, okay? Grab a line. This is why we do the Talkback Hour. We want to hear your opinions on this. Because another angle to the story, with the looming end of these pandemic relief programs, another angle of the story is labor shortages. There's the anecdotal stuff. One of our callers said, drive through CARP, drive through Stittsville. Help wanted signs everywhere. And it's not just CARP and Stittsville, believe me. That's just the anecdotal stuff. The reports we hear from our friends and our neighbors and businesses who can't find employees or starved for workers, staffing shortages. Tim Hortons drive-thrus can't open at 5 o'clock because of staffing shortages. Want ads, help wanted ads all over the place. Drive around town. How many signs do you see that say, we're hiring, apply within? It's actually a good time to be looking for a job. All kinds of jobs available. The problem really isn't, it seems to me, the problem really isn't unemployment now. The problem is job vacancies and how to fill them. The number of job vacancies in Canada is way, way up. Number of job vacancies up 30% just since the end of last year. 730,000 job vacancies. Now, is the CERB responsible for that? Some people suspect it is. That it is acting as a disincentive. How many times have you heard it already this morning? Why would you work if the government would pay you to stay home? So is it time for the government to end that program? 750-1310, 750-1310. Mark in Ottawa. Good morning, Mark. You're on City News.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I think it should be ended.
Okay.
For certain. As somebody who makes, as a disabled person who worked 37 years and never missed or never collected or EI or anything else, and now I collect $1,277 a month from our lovely CPP as a disability insurance thing. I have no idea why these people that can be working are not working.
So you think it should end? Should it end then?
Well,
absolutely, you said, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, good points that you raised there, Mark. Yep, 750-1310. Ian in Brockville. The CERB is set to expire on Saturday. Should it expire? Should the government allow it to expire, Ian, or should the government extend that program?
To answer your question for the poll quickly, you're going to have to put me on the yay side of things. It needs to be done.
Okay.
every time that word is said, I just keep going back to where I was and what I was doing the day that you informed us all that Mr. T wasn't going to ask for any of that money to be paid back, whether it be that or a plethora of other reasons that we've already heard other callers say. At the end of the day, Rob, I'm all about that lady who runs the business. I think that we need to come up with a new program real quick here because the CERB has been used and abused. The government's helped that to be done, but so has the people. But we need to get rid of that ASAP. A lot of those gentlemen were correct. Should have been gone a long time ago. It should all be paid back. That probably really would have showed a different variation how many people are avoiding work right now. And to conclude, again, I almost think that it should almost be kept going right up until they should have another plan in place right now to take care of our business people before it gets cut out so that we're not behind the 8 ball like we know the people in Ottawa like to be.
Like something like for the self-employed.
Yeah, like whether they do some more adjustments to the EI like we were hearing. I'm basically right down the middle with all this, but at the end of the day, it does need to go because it's costing us all way too much.
Okay, thank you. Yep,
yes,
the
sir.
CRB, the Canada Recovery Benefit. The Canada Recovery Benefit. Job vacancies. At the end of last year, at the end of 2020, just like StatsCan does a report quarterly. These are the number of job vacancies in the country. At the end of 2020, there were 560,000 job vacancies across the country. And the term that StatsCan uses is average offered hourly wage. And it was $22.50 an hour. The Canadian average, $22.50 an hour. In Ontario, it was a little bit higher than that. It was $23.10 an hour. PEI had the lowest offered hourly wage in the country at $17.10 an hour. Nunavut had the highest at $34.75 an hour. $34.75 an hour. But you take it all together, it averages out $22.50 an hour across the country, and still there were 560,000 job vacancies. Now, the most recent data that StatsCan has is for the end of the second quarter, so the end of June. And the Canadian economy went from having 560,000 job openings to having 730,000 job openings. That's a 30% increase. And the wages being offered by employers all across the country went up a little bit too. Not any great amount, but it went from $22.50 an hour to $22.85 an hour, so almost $23 an hour. And in Ontario, it's almost $24 an hour. It's $23.85 an hour. Average offered wage to fill a job vacancy. So that's a little more than a 3% increase in just 6 months in the province of Ontario. So it's kind of a crazy labor market right now, where it would seem that, jobs are just going begging. So should we end this program that is supposed to be an income supplement program to help people affected by COVID-19? What do you think? Cindy in Ottawa. Morning, Cindy.
Hey.
So, Cindy, what should we do with the CERB? It's supposed to expire on Saturday.
Get rid of it. It should have been offered to people who didn't have a job anymore because they weren't essential, and people who were essential and jobs were still needed and took the CERB when they didn't necessarily need to. As a company owner myself, I had to close my company down because I couldn't find anyone even before all this pandemic happened, and then it just made it impossible. I ended up working for a large builder in Ottawa, and they were poaching people at $30, getting people to quit other jobs and come to them to find out that they weren't worth the $30, and then that person quit their job that they were getting paid at a different builder to come and work for them, and then they couldn't produce, or they were poorly trained, or whatever the situation, or lazy, and then they left with no job. And then the company I worked for would give you $25 an hour, we'll say, but then you're using your own vehicle. We didn't get any raises because gas didn't go up. Everything was at an all-time low, so our raise went from 3.2% to 1.2%, which we barely made any money. And now, right now, if you're working understaffed, 10, 15 people short, still expecting to produce.
Yeah. There are a lot of businesses that are dealing with staffing shortages. There's no doubt about that, right? Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I think that like the CERB I didn't qualify
right.
as a business owner, so I had to find another job. And other people saying, well, I'm not going to find another job because I have a business and I need to get it up and going. Well, you do what you got to do sometimes, and it is what it is. But I think, like everyone, it's just dragging on too long.
Dragging on too long. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cindy. All the best.
Thanks.
Yep. Good call. Good call. Up next on the Talkback, Amanda in Orleans. Good morning, Amanda.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. What should happen to the CERB? The CRB is supposed to end on Saturday. Should it end or be extended?
So it should end because at this point, I think, what are they getting? $220 $270, so $540 every 2 weeks they're getting.
$540 after tax every 2 weeks. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So $540 after tax after 2 weeks. I don't know about you or me, but that's not very much money. So that's number one.
Right.
I don't think that it's at this point. It's not really helping people. It's more just creating this divergence between who's on CERB, who's not, and quite frankly, there's a lot of studies that have been done post wars. That a lot of people leave employers where they don't feel valued, they don't feel appreciated, because once you go through a traumatic experience, your way of thinking, studies have shown, changes. So people who are having a hard time finding, the report last week, we added 157,000 jobs last year.
Yeah. Last month.
They just came out. Yeah, and the U.S. was, 194,000? So my brain is a little confused how CERB is affecting that, number one, which clearly it's not. But number two is I think those who are really having a hard time finding employers or employees are really employers who had a hard time with retention in the beginning.
Okay.
There's a lot of people who have just realized, hey, life is short.
Right.
And employers need to start valuing people's lives outside of just their work, because we've learned in the last almost 2 years now that we've really needed a lot of flexibility, and a lot of employers weren't prepared to be flexible. And unfortunately, a lot of women, we had to move on from our jobs because we had children.
Right.
So this blaming CERB, I find it a little bit of slap in the face because it did help a lot of people. But
you think some people are, you think the reason that there are so many, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I'm getting is the reason that there are so many job vacancies is because those companies that are suffering from those job vacancies probably don't have a good work culture. Maybe they don't pay people enough, or they don't treat people well enough. And that after everything we've been through with the pandemic, the kids have this term now. It's called YOLO. You know that term? YOLO. You only live once, right? You only live once.
Exactly.
Yeah. So David taught me that. David taught me that. Yeah.
But I feel like I think there needs to be some kind of thought process put into that, because the fact that we had 157,000 jobs created last month. Yeah. It kind of goes contradictory to blaming CERB. So let's look at the job vacancies and ask, why are these jobs vacant? Why are we having retention problems?
Well, why can't employers hire somebody in Ontario? They're offering them $23.85 an hour on average. Why can't you hire somebody to do anything at $23.85 an hour? That's still pretty good money. It's almost $50,000 a year, that money,
Absolutely. But if somebody's got a job already closer to home who's making $5 less based on the LRT situation and the bus situation,
True enough.
People are going to take a pay cut to work at a place closer to their home. So if you're a business that's downtown and people are having a hard time getting there, you're going to have a hard time staffing it, because now, once CERB's done, people are going to be like, how am I going to get to work? So I got to find a job locally.
Okay, so Amanda.
I think I've taken up a lot of time, but I think
No, it's interesting points. Interesting points I didn't really think about, and it's very interesting. It's a great perspective that you just shared, I think, with everybody. We'll be right back.
Thank you. Have a great.
The kids do say that, though. Now, it's one of their terms, right? YOLO?
No kids have said that in 3 or 4 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll talk later. I'll give you an updated list.
Okay. Be right back on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Ottawa Markets was created by the City of Ottawa to help rejuvenate the outdoor markets program in Byward and Wellington West, where we have the Parkdale Market. And so we set to work on bringing in the right team with the right experience and reaching out to local vendors and local farmers, because we knew when we did a survey of our customers that that was the one thing that was really important to them, both at Byward and in Parkdale, is to start bringing back that local product. And that's what you can see behind us here at the York Street Farmers Market. We put in place a Farmers First policy, which means that we will deal with farmers from the region first. And we're going to give them priority in terms of placement. They're going to have reduced fees in coming to the market. We've also made it free for any farm that's been in operation for under 2 years. The market also put in place a BIPOC initiative, which is a Black, Indigenous, and Peoples of Color initiative, which provides grants and support opportunities for folks from those communities to come on out to the market to reduce systemic barriers that have existed. As a farmer's market, we can have a variety of vendors here, from an artisan to a microprocessor who's taking local ingredients and putting them into a product in a kitchen and selling that, to breweries and distilleries this year, which were changes that the province put in place, which allowed us to bring in a few of those vendors as well, which I think is a nice surprise for people sometimes at 9 in the morning after a pandemic, but it's been going really well, and some of the breweries have been pretty appreciative, because for them, whether it just be doing delivery or curbside pickup, it gives them an opportunity to come back out and talk with their customer and talk about what makes their product so special. Throughout the market, the health and safety protocols that you're going to see, masks are still required. That is obviously the case, and you'll see a number of signs noting that around the area. We've got a number of hand sanitizer units, I call them droids, throughout the area that you can sort of just grab a pump or a squeeze wherever you go. But what we've also had to do is reduce the number of vendor spaces we have in the market by 50%. This ensures that we can guarantee that our vendors are going to have that distance, that we can, have a little bit better flow around the market. But what we also did was, as I said, we created the York Street Farmers Market, which is just microprocessors and local producers only, and that's on Saturdays. In Parkdale, we launched the Night Market, which is bringing a lot of the same content, but in the evening, and residents are sort of spilling out into the park. So we're looking at what we're doing as trying to support, create, and enhance public space for the residents of the city. It's been great. The community, which is what this market is here for, and then as tourism comes back, obviously we'll welcome all visitors. But the response has been really great. The community's come on out. They're speaking with their wallets and their dollars, which obviously at the end of the day, we want a great experience, but it needs to be a valuable economic opportunity for the vendors who are coming out.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Should the CRB, the CERB without the E, the Canada Recovery Benefit, expire as scheduled Saturday? Should the Trudeau government end that income supplement program, or should the CRB be extended beyond Saturday? What do you think? 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Is it true, David, that you say the kids don't say YOLO anymore, okay?
Not really.
You only live once. You only live once. Because I've just been doing some Redditing, and what I've learned is they've moved on from saying YOLO to they now say FOMO instead.
FOMO is more current.
Which is fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out, that's right, yeah.
Okay. So if I wanted to be hip and cool, I should say FOMO instead of YOLO.
I'm not going to tell you that you're not hip and cool, but that
when applicable.
Yeah, that would work. That would work, yep.
Okay.
It's appropriate.
My guide to being cool, among many other talents. Barry in Ottawa. Barry.
Yes.
What should happen to the CERB on Saturday? Should it be allowed to expire, or should it be extended? Pardon me.
I really like a couple of points a couple of your callers made.
Yeah.
Amanda, for one, hit a very important point about employers. I've worked at a number of jobs, and when you have a lousy employer, you don't stay there long.
and eventually they go out of business. So there are those kinds of people. They don't pay enough. They cheap out on their employees, and then of course the employee doesn't stay. So I have a trouble understanding why people say, "Well, I can't hire employees." You've got to look at yourself first.
Okay.
Which Amanda was correct.
Okay.
The other one was changing the CERB. The CERB really isn't at $540 a week. I don't know how you can possibly live on that.
Yeah, every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
How can you live on that?
Right. Well, I don't think you're supposed. It's not about living on it, right? Because you're allowed to earn up to $38,000 a year before they even start clawing it back.
I think they just need to refine that program like that other.
Okay.
I agree with him. Make it better, because there are people taking advantage of the program. There's no doubt about that. But for the most part, people did need during the pandemic.
But as it exists right now, scrap it as it is right now, and maybe come up with something new, more fitting for this labor market. Then.
That's right. I agree with that. And the other thing nobody talks about is demographics.
Okay.
There's a huge issue. I was back before the pandemic. People were predicting labor shortages because of the birth rate, and we were allowing immigration to be at very high levels in order to fill those kinds of low-paying jobs.
Sure. And we've had almost no immigration, right? So.
And now we had no immigration.
Yep.
The vacancy rate, and people have all the jobs that are available. A lot of people have taken them because they need the money and stuff. But really, you've got to look at demographics along with, and maybe the way employers have to, and again, it gets back to what Amanda said there, employers have to look at their compensation packages. And I know some small business owners that have changed the way they thought. They've kind of changed the way they've thought of things before because they're having trouble, and they're trying to retain their employees by offering better compensation packages.
Right.
Which makes sense.
Well, I mean, I just go by, I mean, I know that, there's this old line, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics, but I just look at the statistics and I see, it's $23.85 an hour is the average wage that's being offered to fill a vacancy, right? So
that's an average.
An average, sure. It's an average.
Look at the median.
And the median. It doesn't give me the median, though.
I know.
So I can't.
I know it doesn't, but that's the problem.
Right. Okay.
Because that average is being is being shifted by the higher wage earners.
Maybe.
Yes. Oh, it is. It is, because there's a huge percentage of the population. So you just can't use averages as your point. You have to really dig deeper into the stats, and that's the trouble. Most people will not do that.
Well, most people haven't even read this quarterly job vacancies report, let alone dig even deeper. So there you go. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. I've started digging. I've started digging, Barry. I'm trying. Okay. Yeah, dig a little bit more. Okay.
But it means you're in private business.
All right. Thank you.
You have to generate income and everything.
Sure.
So
yeah.
I understand that you have limited time. So that's the problem.
Okay.
Again, that's part of the workload versus employee benefits and stuff with Bell and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, gotta go.
Anyways,
Thank you.
I made my point.
Thank you, Barry. Yep, good points. Good points all around. Good points all around. I love the discussion this morning. Matt in Ottawa. What should happen to the CERB on Saturday?
Well, first off, let's talk about being hip and cool, maybe. I'm a little bit past my prime in those years, but I don't think the kids are saying FOMO anymore either.
They don't say FOMO anymore.
No, that's it's all over. They might actually be moving away from acronyms in general.
Okay.
But,
well, should we move away from CRB, the CERB? What about that one?
Let's talk about the kids these days, right? So let's move on to the CERB. So I'd like to touch on a couple things regarding CERB. And then one thing that hasn't really come out as part of this conversation has been the CEBA as well, that I wanted to touch on a little bit. We'll start with the CERB, and I think that it definitely is something that needs to come to an end, absolutely. Okay. And I should mention that I'm a business owner, an employer, and I get asked all the time, have you been affected by CERB? Are you hurt by CERB? And the reality is that our starting wages are much higher than any sort of minimum wage that kind of pulls that a little bit out of the conversation. We do have an issue with employees, and it's a construction business. And I believe, personally, the reason that we're having...
Oh, Matt, are you there?
Absolutely. Yep. What Amanda had touched on about, look at the employer, look at how they treat their employees and things like that. But then it's a lot more about that the skill sets of unemployed people do not match the skill sets required of these open jobs that you're talking about. And that's sort of a big issue. A lot of people went to university whenever really they should have gotten a trades job, right? These are things that, as has been mentioned previously as well.
Yeah, like you wouldn't want me on your construction site.
Hey, we can train anybody with the right attitude, Rob.
I suppose. Yeah.
But that's basically kind of where there's this big disconnect, and a lot of people are willing to bend over and blame it on CERB, right? Oh, I can't find guys, I can't find employees, but it's the past few years has been a lot of reflection in our business of how do we treat people. What can we do to compensate and attract and retain and things like that. A lot of professional and personal growth aligned with that. But then it does kind of come down to like, okay, there's only so many people that are capable of doing this job, and there's not good training programs in place for people to switch into this type of career. So that's sort of where I think that a lot of the trouble with the unemployment is actually coming from. Then to touch on the CEBA, as I mentioned for a little bit, this is where CERB sort of irks me a little bit, is that as a business owner, I received several loans through the government, but they're just that, they're loans. They're not just free money like the rest of society has gotten, and no self-employed person was ever eligible to receive that CERB. And that, for me, that's okay. We worked around it and figured it all out, but not every business owner has that privilege and luxury, right? So I think that a lot more should have been done for businesses, because the reality is, that loan, it's a $60,000 loan. If 40,000 of that is repaid by next Christmas, then 20,000 doesn't need to be repaid. But the reality is the person who's been collecting CERB this entire time has collected more than $20,000 from the government, didn't create any jobs, didn't et cetera, et cetera. But it just doesn't quite align with, here's all this money for sitting around doing nothing. But, we shut down your business for a period of time. Everything has become more expensive. Inflation has been crazy, but there's nothing for you, the job creators, to help on that side of things. So that I felt was a little bit of a mistake of how it was all implemented.
Okay, thanks for your call, Matt. Thanks for all of your calls during that hour. Very interesting discussion this week. In the end, not really close, though. 12-1. Time to get rid of the CERB. Back tomorrow with the Talkback Hour. Geoffrey Johnston, standing by international affairs columnist with the Kingston Whig-Standard on the life and career of the late Colin Powell. Coming right up on City News.
W1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, October 18th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, 7 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The search for a missing person continues today. 35-year-old Brett O'Grady, whose LinkedIn profile lists him as treasurer at Shopify, has been missing since early Thursday morning, and that's in the East End around Aviation Parkway. Police and volunteers did spend the weekend in the search of a wooded area around Aviation Parkway and the Ottawa River. A water and shoreline search as well as a drone used, all deployed in that area. If you live there, you're going to see more police presence and searchers today. We'll have more on this story coming up on the Sam LaPrade Show this afternoon on City News. It's 11:02. Now your forecast from meteorologist Jill Taylor. Cloudy with a cool high today of just 10. Partly cloudy, dropping to 3 tonight. And then tomorrow, a bit more sunshine, a little bit warmer too, with a high of 17. We're expecting to hear an update from the province this week about capacity limits for restaurants and bars and gyms and the like. Dom Santaguida is the owner of Vittoria Trattoria restaurant and tells City News what he would like to see.
I'm hoping to be on the same playing field as the sporting venues. The gyms and restaurants have done really a great job of keeping their customers and patrons safe. I don't see why we were excluded when they lifted the capacity limits for, the Sens game.
Now, he points out that at 50% capacity in his business, his overhead still remains at 100% that has to be paid. Weeks after apologizing to an Indigenous chief for not accepting her invitation to an event marking Canada's first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will be in Kamloops, BC today, making up for that misstep.
The Prime Minister will visit the Tecumloops Secwépemc Nation, which announced in May it had used ground-penetrating radar technology to find what are believed to be 215 unmarked graves at the site of the former Kamloops Indian Residential School. Several Indigenous nations have since reported finding unmarked graves at other shuttered, abuse-ridden residential schools. Today's visit comes after Trudeau's apology this month to Tecumloops Chief Roseanne Casimir for having traveled with his family to Tofino, BC, and not appearing at any in-person events September 30th to honor survivors of the state-sponsored residential school system. Karen Rebo, The Canadian Press.
City News Time, 11:04. Police looking for witnesses to a hit and run in Lowertown. It was last night around 8:30. A person on an e-scooter was crossing Rideau and Wurtemberg when he was struck by a vehicle that had run a red light. The vehicle left the scene. The pedestrian did suffer injuries but is now in stable condition. Now, the suspect vehicle is a dark car. Police say possibly a Honda that would have damage to the front end. If you know anything about this, you're asked to contact Ottawa Police. A new Clearage home in Ottawa could cost you about $100,000 more. The chief financial officer for that company says the city's new official plan may skyrocket home prices. Neil Malhotra is speaking with the Rob Snow Show.
That shortfall of where people want to live, and we don't have enough houses, and it triggers more and more costs in the lack of supply of housing. A house may cost $100,000 more out of this official plan.
Now, amendments are continuing to be discussed today. The official plan is scheduled to go to council next Wednesday. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Every Monday morning, we're joined by international affairs columnist with the Kingston Whig-Standard, Geoffrey Johnston. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, it's really nice to hear from you. Thanks for taking the time again. Let's start with the breaking news of the morning for international affairs, and that's the passing of Colin Powell, the former Joint Chiefs Chairman, Secretary of State for the United States, died of COVID-19 complications, was fully vaccinated, 84 years old, though. First African-American to serve as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Secretary of State. but there will always be a certain, I guess, taint, right, to his reputation because of Iraq WMD, right, Geoffrey?
Yes. I'll note that General Powell had an advanced form of cancer, and his immune system was compromised. And as we know, people with cancer and other immune conditions can still get COVID and perish from it. So that's why it's important for everybody to get vaccinated. I just wanted to put that out there. Colin Powell was a towering figure. He was the son of Jamaican immigrants. He was the first black man to become National Security Advisor, head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The guy was a Vietnam War hero. When you look at the era in which he served, he was around in pivotal points and played leadership roles when the Berlin Wall fell, when the Soviet Union collapsed. Of course, he was the head of the military when the United States drove Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein's forces out of Kuwait. He was a towering figure and opened the door for other black Americans to assume leadership roles. So Condoleezza Rice later went on to become the National Security Advisor and then Secretary of State. The current Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, an African-American, credits Colin Powell as being a trailblazer and being his mentor. So it is a huge loss. Colin Powell was twice awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Now, yes, Colin Powell in a 2005 interview did acknowledge that the WMD debacle, when he went before the United Nations and testified that there were indeed weapons of mass destruction in Iraq being held by Saddam Hussein, he said that was a terrible blot. He believed the intelligence, but he said that there were people within the intelligence community that knew that they did not have the weapons and that it was a failure of the system. So yes, that's always going to be a blot on his record, but nevertheless a towering figure.
Okay. Moving along to your most recent column for the Kingston Whig-Standard on international affairs, you really do go 10,000 feet up. You look at organizations like the IMF, the World Bank, the United Nations, and what they're saying about how COVID-19 has contributed to poverty around the world. Tell us about it, Geoffrey.
Yes. So the COVID-19 pandemic, it's hit all of us hard. And you were discussing this earlier in relation to the CERB. But, it's hit low and middle income countries especially hard, and especially the poorest people. According to the new annual report from the World Bank, the pandemic has thrown 100 million people into extreme poverty. In Sub-Saharan Africa alone, 40 million people have been pushed into extreme poverty, and that means that people are living on $1.90 a day or less. Now, I couldn't live on that, but there are right now 40 million people that weren't in that situation before the pandemic, and they're living that reality today. According to the World Bank, Sub-Saharan Africa has fallen into its first recession in 25 years, and this is because of the pandemic. They also note that there are prospects for economic growth in 2023, but only if the deployment of vaccines are accelerated. If we don't get vaccines to that part of the world, they're not going to recover economically, and that means that more people are going to fall into extreme poverty, and it's going to be really grim.
Okay. Now tell us about the controversial appointment of the former British Secretary of Health, Matt Hancock. What's that all about?
Yeah, so Mr. Hancock had to resign earlier this year after he violated social distancing rules and was caught up in a rather sordid controversy. And last week, then the United Nations appointed him as special envoy for Africa's pandemic recovery. And this did not go over well with civil society groups, NGOs, non-governmental organizations, because they did not see Matt Hancock or the Boris Johnson government as a friend to Africa when it came to pandemic response, because the Johnson government has consistently opposed proposed waiving intellectual property rights regarding COVID-19 vaccine technologies. Right now, the World Health Organization is asking for a waiver on intellectual property rights so that low and middle income countries can produce their own generic versions of the COVID-19 vaccines. And Hancock was instrumental in speaking out against this, and he even actually publicly derided a civil society group for pushing that. It's Global Justice Now. So I contacted a number of non-governmental organizations, and such as Médecins Sans Frontières and others, and they, at the time, did not think it was a good idea that Matt Hancock was being appointed. The long and the short of all of this is that after the controversy erupted, the UN a couple days later withdrew the appointment. Now, Hancock is now saying that they're withdrawing it because he's still a sitting MP in the British Parliament, and therefore that violates some sort of rule. But the fact is that his appointment went over like a lead balloon with anybody who follows Africa or anybody who's concerned about the vaccine file. So it's a big misstep for the United Nations, I believe. I just wonder what they were thinking when they appointed him, because it did not go over well.
Okay. Always great to hear from you, Geoffrey. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, bye-bye. That's Geoffrey Johnston from the Kingston Whig-Standard, where he writes about international affairs. Later in the week, inflation is going to be a big news story. The inflation rate came out last week in the United States. It was 5.4% annualized. And the Consumer Price Index for Canada comes out, I believe it's in the middle of this month, middle of the week on Wednesday. I mean, we're seeing crazy inflation numbers, like inflation numbers we haven't seen in a long, long time. Now, in the United States, at 5.4%, they use a different basket of consumer goods to measure inflation in the United States. Used car prices, for example, are a component in the CPI basket of goods in the U.S. They're not here, so I've had Canadian economists tell me that's why inflation has been running hotter in the United States and in Canada. But really, the effects on the consumer are the same. CPI, Consumer Price Index, comes out later this week. But there's also another measure of inflation, and that's wholesale inflation, and that's called the PPI, the Producer Price Index. You think about it like CPI is the retail index and PPI is the wholesale index. And the PPI number came out last week in the United States. You know what it was? 8.6%. Producer inflation. That was the U.S. number that came out next week. And in China, they have another economic measure, which is called factory gate prices, which are just like they sound. What does it cost to get something out of the factory? It's another measure of wholesale inflation. And the year-over-year increase on that number that came out last week was 10.7%, which was the hottest number in 26 years. And now we even have big bankers in this country can't agree what's happening with inflation. The Bank of Canada insists that whatever inflation we are going through right now, it's all transitory, which is a $10 word for temporary. I don't know why they just don't say temporary. But the CEO of the Royal Bank, the most valuable chartered bank in the country, he said this week that inflation is more persistent and disagrees with what the Bank of Canada is saying about inflation. So, we've seen it in consumer prices for food, the price of gas, $1.47 just around the corner here, prices for building materials. And now the economists are telling me the next thing to watch is for wage inflation. Will it all feed into wages? Especially when you have job vacancies by the hundreds of thousands all across the country, more than 700,000 all across the country, 30% higher than 6 months ago. This is the Rob Snow Show. That's a story we'll be watching this week here on City News.
Well, we're celebrating our 43rd year. It's still family operated. We're in our second generation. We, pre-COVID, we're at about 1,000 employees. We have 20 stores from coast to coast in Canada. We do our own manufacturing. Right here in Ottawa, we have about 160 people that support Canadian-made manufacturing in addition to our retail stores. Taking you back to mid-March and the impact of the pandemic on Lee Valley. Lee Valley was actually in a tough spot. We had just launched our website a few months prior to that, and we were going through, a fairly typical deployment dive where your customers retract as they adjust to the website. And then under stress already, this pandemic hit. And in the early days, it was pretty critical. It hit us really hard. Stores were closed. We weren't sure what to do, so we had to go right into survival mode. As a result, we had to take our workforce almost back to half of where we were at because the stores were closed, and with 20 stores, that's a big retail workforce. But what we were able to do pretty quickly, with a little luck, being essential, selling tools and hardware, we were able to adjust our business model, with respect to the stores and our fulfillment operation. That new website that we were under stress worked out well for us because as the world was under house arrest, people were looking to online, and the conversion to our online sales in some cases almost doubled. And we saw tremendous interest in things to do at home. Where we were lucky once again and fortunate is at our product offering. Work at home tools, craft, hobbies, backyard, container gardening, you name it. What we sold was really appealing to people. With respect to our stores, Lee Valley, a rare unknown fact was that we were one of the pioneers of curbside pickup. We've been doing it for 25 years. Pretty much dove right into the application to help with the contactless shopping right away. We took the application, and it's not like a Apple application where you have to download it to your phone and clutter up your phone. This literally resides right on our website. So you walk into our store with your phone, you pull up our website, and there's a little scan icon. You just tap that, select your store, off you go. You go through the showroom, you scan product, you can read more about it, you can check the on-hand, you can add it to your cart, continue to shop, and when you're ready, you just submit it to the counter. We'll go pick it for you. We'll call out your name, we'll check you out, send you on your way. You haven't touched anything. It's completely safe, and it's using a device you're comfortable with and a website that you're familiar with. Amazingly, 9 out of 10 people that used it loved it and want to use it again.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Just a little bit of what's happening on the City Beat today. It's once more the Joint Planning Committee and Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee meeting. They're going over the official plan.
Trying to give
very gripping stuff.
It is not open season on backyards, as my colleague Mr. Wise indicated. Through quite a bit of work that we've done in the zoning bylaw, we have looked at rear yard setbacks. This same policy also has at C direction with respect to variances to reduce the minimum required side yard. And that's a direction to make sure that we have functionality of being able to get to and from the back to the street. So these are, I would say, improvements over the situation that we have today, where we are giving clearer direction to the Committee of Adjustment as to when it's okay, and if it's going to be okay, how it's going to be okay, rather than to just have a vacuum of policy direction.
Set your PVRs if that's the sort of thing that interests you. And it does interest a lot of people. It's about your backyard and your front yard and your side yard and your variance and what the city can do and what you can do. And boy, oh boy, it has been just epic. This committee meeting, this joint committee meeting with the ARAC committee and the planning committee. And then they're going to take all of that and send it off to the city council a little later this month, and we'll have a new official plan. David Sali is back from the Ottawa Business Journal. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, it's great to hear from you. And we're kind of on the same wavelength because you have a story in the last few days where you had a chance to speak with Neil Malhotra from Claridge Homes, and I had an opportunity to interview him this morning about actually a development that we talked about last week, David, you and me, that 60-story tower that would be near Carling and Preston. This is Mr. Malhotra on City News with me this morning. Go ahead.
Well, it's interesting. I think one place the city of Ottawa has really matured over the last 15, 20 years is that we do understand we do need high density at transit stations. Carling Preston is a unique neighborhood that does have a very strong transit presence to the north-south transit line. So, I don't suspect, the height is probably going to be one of the least discussed items, I would imagine, through this planning application. I think we'll be discussing a lot more how the building interacts with the street. I think we'll be discussing, I suspect the community will want to discuss housing affordability will be a big issue for them. That's a maturing city, and those are good things. I think that's the tall buildings is not where the friction is in intensification today. Today, the intensification friction is more in the existing single-family neighborhoods and seeing the single-family homes convert into, even
that's
2 units.
Thank you, Dave.
A lot of
so he said actually the height of this building he doesn't think is going to be, necessarily controversial. 60 stories at the corner of Preston and Carling, and you had a chance to kind of quiz the councillor for that ward as well. Catherine McKenney. So give us a sense of what you come away with it, because it would be the tallest building in Ottawa as it stands. So.
Right. It would be, that's right, Rob, 188 meters. That would be the height of this new building, which would be basically, interestingly, is almost right across the street from Claridge's Icon condo tower, which is currently Ottawa's tallest building at 143 meters. So you're going to have some, you're going to have some twin towers, so to speak, there if this goes through. And and I talked to Catherine McKenney, who is the councillor for Somerset Ward. She represents the neighborhood, and I mean, she agreed with Malhotra. She doesn't think height is going to be the key issue for residents. She realizes that, I mean, this is where as she said, this is where you want intensification. It's basically in the secondary plan. I mean, there are allowances for buildings well above 30 stories being right there beside the LRT station, as Malhotra mentioned. So that's not really, that's not really something that's concerning her too much. It's more, of course, the other usual concerns, right? Traffic, because there is going to be several layers of underground and above-ground parking integrated into the building, 385 parking spots. McKenney says that's far too many for the building. They said that it's right near, because it's right near light rail. McKenney feels the whole point is to encourage people not to have cars. Who live in the building. Right. So that's something they're a little bit concerned about, as well. As Malhotra mentioned, the public realm. How is this building going to integrate into the neighborhood? How will it integrate into the streetscape? All of that sort of stuff. Again, there are elements in there. There's going to be some sort of a promenade, tree-lined promenade that will connect Carling Avenue and Preston, apparently, and of course they will likely, Claridge will also likely be paying, a certain amount, will be investing in nearby green space, likely in exchange for that increased height. So McKenney feels, that will be a benefit to the neighborhood as well. So on the whole, it sounds like, I'm not saying it's going to be totally smooth sailing for this proposal, but these things never are, Rob. As you know, there will certainly be objections, and there will certainly be no doubt negotiations between Claridge and the city. But it seems like that this is something that a proposal that will have some traction. And Malhotra again said, obviously nothing is written in stone, and this is just the start of the process. You know how these things go. There's always changes, always refinements, always modifications in these proposals. So it'll be interesting to see what eventually does emerge and whether it will be 60 stories or...
it might not be 60 stories in the end.
Exactly. It might be slightly not quite that tall, but clearly Clearage does want height here. That is...
no doubt about that. No doubt about that. So what's behind the interesting story this morning for the Ottawa Business Journal? 5,000 net jobs lost in the Ottawa retail sector. And you had an opportunity to speak with some people, some observers. What do they think is going on?
Exactly. It's interesting. The according to Statistics Canada, the retail sector lost 5,000 net jobs last month. That's on top of another roughly 3,600 the month before. So I talked to some industry analysts, about that. Why we're opening back up. Retail is now, stores are now open, and so why is it that that these that the employment is falling in retail at the same time as stores are reopening? A few people, Ian Lee from Carleton University Sprott School of Business, I spoke to him. He says he just thinks this is the beginning of a long-term trend as retailers scale back brick and mortar operations and move towards e-commerce. He thinks you're going to see even more employment loss in the sector as it goes through what he calls a strategic rationalization. Others, David Gray from the University of Ottawa, he attributed to kind of a lag effect. All these months of closures have kind of left a lot of shop owners with unpaid bills that they're now trying to recover from. They have to cut expenses somewhere, so they're cutting labor. It's just all. Michelle Grew from the Ottawa Coalition of Business Improvement Areas also noted that a lot of retailers had to rely this summer on summer students. It was tougher to find workers. Every industry, we know, Rob, is saying that, how hard it is to get people maybe to things like CERB, whatever it is. So retailers were using a lot of high school and university students to fill the void, and they're now back in the classroom. So she feels that also kind of helped attribute to the dramatic drop in retail jobs.
Well, thank you again for this week, David Sali. Great stuff. We'll talk next week.
All right. Thanks, Rob.
From the Ottawa Business Journal, that's David Sali. Back right after the news on City News.
1310 AM.
This is Monday, the 18th of October. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa, mostly cloudy, 8 degrees. It's 8 in Smiths Falls as well. Here's what's making news this hour. An update on Ottawa's LRT return to service plan is expected sometime today. Ottawa City staff spent part of their weekend poring over a large document from Rideau Transit Group to check their work. The city manager, Steve Candelakis, plans to send details about whether the plan is workable to City Council sometime today. Ottawa police are searching for the driver who hit a man on an e-scooter, then fled the scene last night in Lowertown. It happened around 8:30 at Rideau and Württemberg when the driver ran a red light. The man who was on the e-scooter is now in hospital with serious injuries but in stable condition. Police are looking for a dark car, possibly a Honda, with damage to the front end. If you have information, you're asked to contact police. Ground and water searchers out in force again looking for a missing 35-year-old man. Brett O'Grady, the treasurer of Shopify, was last seen Thursday in Ottawa's East End around the Aviation Parkway. The province is funding a skills development program at Algonquin College. $1.5 million will address the shortage of employees in the manufacturing sector. Ottawa West Nepean MPP Jeremy Roberts' office says the cash will support 50 people who are looking for work and 100 others already working with 4 local companies. City News Time, 11:32. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
So once again, your city councilors are back at it, hard at it again. It's the joint meeting of the Planning Committee and Agriculture and Rural Affairs up for discussion, the city's official plan.
So safe to say, it would be, I don't want to hold you to a hard and fast timeline. I know
Catherine
these things
Pitts
are kind of a moving target, but safe to say about it, probably a decade before we would see a shovel in the ground for Taywin.
Talking about Taywin.
Yes, as I think Mr. Mark has advised, it's dangerous to quote an exact number, but in terms of, past and recent examples, I think that is a reasonable indication of the work ahead of us before you will see shovels in the ground. So I think the range I identified was that 6 to 13 year has been our experience as the new city in terms of designation in the official plan, secondary plan. So yes, I would think that that eight year average would be certainly a reasonable threshold.
Okay.
8 to 13 years. Thank you, David. 8 to 13 years. This is another big issue with part of this official plan. 8 to 13 years before you break ground on the Taywin development, what some are calling Ottawa's 4th suburb. It would be Ottawa's 4th suburb, this partnership between Taggart and a group called the AOO, Algonquins of Ontario. And that group was speaking at this joint committee about the official plan just last week. So listen, not everyone is on board with this. Some of the city councilors are opposed to this, but so are some Algonquin leaders, chiefs, elders, because they don't view the AOO as a legitimate group to speak about land claims and reconciliation. Kitigan Zibi Elder Claudette Commanda joins me once more here on City News. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, it's very nice to hear from you. You've been very critical of this project, and I'm wondering why.
Well, critical in the sense that I'm concerned. Not only am I concerned, but so are many community members from the various Algonquin communities, the Algonquin Nation as a collective. We're very concerned about this. But to share my perspective on this, why I have concerns, is let's begin with calling this deal reconciliation.
Okay.
How is a fee simple land purchase reconciliation? How? I don't understand this. And from my perspective as a First Nation, as an Algonquin, this is not reconciliation. Reconciliation is between nations to nation. Reconciliation is not a deal between a corporation and an organization or members of an agency. It's not. So don't call this reconciliation. I don't understand how this is reconciliation. So that's the main concern. And the other concern is this AOO. AOO is not a nation.
Okay, what is it?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's a corporation.
Okay.
And as you're well aware that the nation itself, the collective, the Algonquin Nation, which comprises of those communities that are found in the province of Quebec and two in Ontario, which are Pikwakanon and Wagushish, we are the nation. We are the legitimate communities. We are the nation of Algonquin people, the collective. Ever since there was the announcement of an AOO, we have always raised our concerns about the legitimacy of this organization. Who are these people? But when you're looking at it from that sense of an organization or a corporation, they cannot be speaking on behalf of the Algonquin people.
Why not?
Because they're not Algonquin people. They're not the communities. They are not the nation.
Okay.
Now, with the exception of Pikwakanon, the Algonquins of Pikwakanon are indeed our relatives. They are indeed our brothers and sisters of Algonquin people. And we have those kinships, we have the family connections, and we know who our relatives are in our people. So with the exception of Pikwakanon, within the AOO, Pikwakanon is the legitimate community that is recognized.
Well, the chief of Pikwakanagan First Nation is Wendy Jocko. She had a column. The chief had a column in the Citizen last week about this, and it's not. I don't want to, put one nation against another, but nevertheless, she wrote, quote, "It is paternalistic, colonial, insulting, and frustrating to have to constantly defend ourselves, particularly since our partnership with Taggart Group is a shining example of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's Call to Action 92, which is the call to ensure that Indigenous communities gain long-term sustainable benefits from economic development projects." How do you respond to that?
Well, you're right. I'm not here to have a debate on, one Algonquin against another Algonquin. I respect Chief Wendy Jocko. I respect her community members and their position on this land deal or this whole construct called the AOO. And I think it's really important that the community members of Pikwakanon, that they too can voice their concerns or their opinions relating to the AOO as well as this Taywin land purchase. Now, with respect to, if indeed this is what the collective membership of Pikwakanon feels about the Taywin land development as reconciliation, well, then I respect that what the collective of Pikwakanon and how they feel about this. Now, I go back to say that my question through all of this as well is, Will the membership, will the collective, will the community of Pikwakanon, will they collectively benefit from this land deal called or this partnership with Taggart or any other company that's involved, and also the collective as a nation? And how do the Algonquin people? How will they benefit? How?
I would like to know, for example, how would your community benefit from a project like Taywin?
Well, I think what's really important is that to look at the benefit. Number one, the benefit is like who owns this the land that is purchased? Who is the true owner of the land? Who will economically benefit from whatever development will be placed on this land?
Right.
And, how much, if there's a joint venture between, we'll say, the land developer and the Algonquin Nation, then it has to be clearly spelled out what is percentage of ownership for each, and what is the economic gain? What will be the revenue generating revenue stream. How much will go directly to the community? How will the community gain in terms of employment and training? And if this development relates
social infrastructure, whatever, community, improvements to healthcare, education, these sorts of things.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how will they develop? How will they benefit? Like financially, socially, politically, economic. I mean, you name it. Every aspect of living is there's a benefit to that. And so, what are the impacts? What are the impacts of this deal, and what are the long-lasting impacts of this deal?
Okay, I want to ask you about something else that's in the news today. I haven't had a chance to speak to you post the very first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. I did speak to you prior to it. So I haven't asked you about the controversy of the Prime Minister not visiting any events on that day and instead choosing to take his family on a vacation to Tofino. He's kind of doing his, his make good today, Claudette, Commanda, and he's going to Kamloops to speak to residential school survivors and First Nations leadership there. What do you think about what the Prime Minister's doing today?
Well, what the Prime Minister should have done on September 30th was visit Kamloops, the Kamloops community, visit the community, the families of those children that were found in those unmarked graves. The community is still grieving, and we must hold them dear in our heart. So when I look at that from a wider lens, our entire nation of First Nations people, our communities, are grieving with our relatives in Kamloops. So the Prime Minister should have done the right thing, and that was to set aside September 30th and to stand with First Nations people, Indigenous peoples, and Canadians who came out to have that day of reflection, to honor, to remember, and to show respect to the residential school survivors, those who came home and those who did not come home. What is one day of your life that you can put on hold for your family vacation or your personal vacation? That should have happened immediately on September 30th, not 2 or 3 weeks later, or after an apology. Actions speak louder than words.
Okay. As I'm sure you're aware, there have been quite a few editorials and columns in the newspaper about the flag on the Peace Tower and all the other federal government buildings being at half-mast all this time. And some people are wondering, when are we ever going to put the flag up again? What's your opinion on that? Do you have an opinion on that? Or?
I'd like to share what has been told to me by my elders and the residential school survivors. Number one, we need to always hold in our heart the survivors, those survivors that continue to live with the reality of the traumas of residential schools and the healing and the resilience. Absolutely, and we certainly hold them dear in our heart, that's for sure. And we should never forget residential schools, what it's about, and continue to be Canada as a whole needs to continue to educate themselves about residential schools and the impacts. Now, the survivors, as well as leaders, those ceremonial leaders or our elders, basically what they are saying is that decision relating to the Canadian flag that is half-mast, that is the call of the Canadian government to decide what they're going to do with this. Don't put that on our backs to make a decision on when should that flag be, raised, or should it be left half-mast. That's not our responsibility.
Okay. Claudette, Commanda, always so nice to have your perspective and your insight. Thank you so much again.
Well, thank you, Rob.
Yeah.
Take good care.
Talk soon. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Claudette, Commanda from Kitigan, Zibi, Elder Kitigan, Zibi. 11:45, Money Monday. Coming up next with Peter Fraser from Cardinal Planning and Manulife Securities. This is City News.
Papa Jack was started 14 years ago, really by accident more than anything. A friend of mine had bought a grocery store. A popcorn machine was in there. He didn't want it. I ended up buying it. My family thought I was nuts. When I first said, come and pick up this popcorn machine, my son said, what the heck for? I won't use exact words. But anyway, we started, and it just kept on growing and growing. But at the time, I was the only one selling popcorn in Ottawa. But we persevered as a family, and here we are. So it's been very, very rewarding for my family and myself. And to see our brand name, Papa Jack, and Papa Jack came out of, I wanted something that was going to be very bilingual. So Papa, and then in Ontario, everybody called me Jack, even though my name is Jacques. In Quebec, it's fine, it's Jacques, but in Ontario, it was always Jack. So we married the two together, Papa, Jack. With the store that we have on Thurston Drive, it basically, the factory's in the back. If you come into the store, you can see how the popcorn is being made during the week. So it adds an extra layer of, you can see the sanitation, you can see how we do it. It's not like making popcorn. Most people thought when I started this, I was making popcorn in my garage or in my basement. No, never did. It was started in this building, in the back of the building, and then we kept growing and growing until what we have now. My daughter and my son came up with a brilliant idea to do a fundraiser online. So basically all people have to do is to register here, and we give them a special code number. And with that code number, they tell their friends, their neighbors, everybody to buy online from us with that code number. And then at the end of each period, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, then we'll pay them a 20% of all the businesses that we got through that code number. One thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the Ottawa people who have supported us and support local businesses. Sometimes people, they talk about buying locally. Now it becomes that much more important to buy locally, to support your local businesses, because not too many of them are going to survive this. We're fortunate that we're so far so good.
Pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Just looking at some of the market numbers right now for Money Monday with Peter Fraser. All of a sudden, the Canadian dollar is getting up there. The Canadian dollar is closing in on 81 cents U.S. right now. It's at the last one I have is 80.85 cents U.S. for the loonie. That's probably because of oil, I'm guessing, which is just shy of $82 U.S. a barrel. West Texas oil, $82 a barrel, just shy. $81.95 a barrel. $1.47 around the corner here. Painful. And you would think with all this talk about inflation that gold would get a bid, but gold has been kind of just range-bound. 1770 or so U.S. an ounce. It seems like it's been there forever. And instead, the inflation trade has kind of become Bitcoins now. 62,000 now for Bitcoins. Way back up to 62,100. Time now for Money Monday with Peter Fraser. Welcome back from Cardinal Planning and Manulife Securities. Great to talk to you again.
You too.
And we're going to talk about the COVID-19 pandemic and its effect on Canadians' financial plan, because there's a new study out there, some new data out there from the Canadian Institute of Actuaries. What does it say, Peter?
Well, I thought it was interesting, the top of the hour, your guest talking about the impact of COVID on Sub-Saharan Africa and the wretched poverty that's looking to have in place. But basically, Ipsos did this big study on 1,500 Canadians looking to see what the impact of the pandemic had been on their financial planning, and I found it really informative, and these are my words, not theirs, but that COVID is a game changer when it comes to how Canadians are thinking and preparing for retirement, and especially their views of things like care and assisted living. But basically their financial plans, one of the big findings is that, the financial plans, and especially their retirement-centered financial plans, the risks and the concerns and the preparedness are looking fairly beaten up as a result of this pandemic.
Okay. So an actuary, for people who aren't aware what an actuary does, but basically what does an actuary do?
Well, an actuary kind of, in my mind, they count things, but they also have to, calculate probabilities and outcomes and, the possibilities. And, they're kind of, not statisticians, but statistical outcomes that are used in the prediction of all kinds of things, from insurance.
But really, big in planning for pension plans, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
One of the biggest.
If you're going to live this long and have this kind of life, you need this kind of return. An actuary would do something like that.
Correct. Longevity issues and how likely something is to happen. So.
Okay.
And in this particular case, they asked Ipsos to study Canadians and came back with the discovery that 25% of people who currently are not retired are indicating that the pandemic has impacted their retirement timelines negatively. And that 36% of the people who answered are presently taking home less household income due to the pandemic, and taken on, 25% of the respondees indicated they'd taken on more debt. So it was kind of a...
More debt, less income. More debt and less income. Okay.
And 2/3 of them sum it up by saying, yes, they or their spouse are going to have to work longer than they planned, and they attribute that to the pandemic. But I think for me, one of the stark discoveries just is a confirmation, really, but not a surprise, but that more than 50% of Canadians presently and still have no financial plan for retirement.
No plan at all.
No plan at all, yeah. So obviously as a professional, I have a bias, but no less than Dwight Eisenhower said that, plans are worthless, but planning is everything. So this was really, in my view, the first of two significant discoveries that survey laid bare. And the second one had to do with care and assisted living and things that obviously people, don't go to top of mind, but very important.
But what comes through is if you do sit down with a financial planner and just come up with a plan, the survey shows you'll have more peace of mind, right? You will have more peace of mind. You won't have the same level of anxiety about your retirement, right? So,
well, yeah.
Like it says 80% of those who do have a financial plan expect to live comfortably in retirement.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, working without a net is unnerving at the best of times. And, this has to do with when you've stopped working for money and you hope that the kinds of things you've assembled will go to work for you. You have a situation in life where you hope that you can have money at work as opposed to you being at work. And, this is a really important plan, a VIP, and it's not in place for half the people when the benefits of having a plan are really quite extraordinary, as articulated by the people who have one.
Okay, so it shouldn't be a surprise, after everything we've been through in the pandemic and so many people having either known someone in long-term care or assisted care and the terrible circumstance there early into the pandemic and through the second and third wave, that people would have a negative view of assisted living facilities. Okay, I don't think that's. But how should we think about, say, that point in our life or in our parents' life from a financial planning point of view, Peter?
Well, I'll say this, and this is just a personal preference on mine based on 11 years and 2 parents and 3 levels of care here in Ottawa, but how you're going to care for yourself in this day and age with life expectancies out where they are. The 100-year-old is the fastest growing age cohort in Canada. So a financial plan for retirement that does not include money for life, that provisions for care cost emergencies is not, in my view, a 21st century financial plan. And that's borne out by still people saying they have, here's a perfect storm. I have no personal insurance for things like critical illness or long-term care. And yet a third of us believe we're going to need care, and we don't want to go to those places where too many people died in a pandemic in care facilities. And 2/3 of the same cohort say, I have absolutely no plan in place for long-term care needs. So it's not attractive, and I know it's not as fun as planning cruises in your retirement financial plan, but the fragility and the support of protection in old age is really laid bare in this one, because now people don't want to go to those places where the apparently low-cost care is provided, and they haven't gone the distance in formulating their own plans for how you're going to handle that if it comes your way.
Yeah. And maybe governments and industry, whether that's financial institutions or planning professionals, have to really start driving that home. Like, this could be you. Or this will be you.
My profession and all those allied contributors have work to do. And, nobody likes to be told what the unpleasant parts of growing old are. And in many ways, that longevity cohort I told you about, the last 10 years are not a pretty picture. So they're expensive. And the opportunity to help people get a plan in place that is at least reflective of that reality, I think, is what this study laid bare. And I think I speak for a lot of professionals in my business that just says, we would invite people to please. If you're in the 50% cohort that don't have a plan, start one. And if you have one, start including more attention to the very real costs of growing old and needing care.
Thank you, Peter. Always great. We'll talk next week. Bye-bye.
Yep. Thank you. Bye-bye.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.